Evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 7th, 2023 School Board meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Mr. Walker, would you please do a roll call for us?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Rich.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mrs. Weems.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Heinrich.
Yes, here.
I myself am here, and Dr. Blau.
I am also here.
We're all set.
Thank you. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we have the approval of the agenda. Yes.
I move that we approve the agenda for the regular meeting of the Board of Education Tuesday, March 7th, as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Heinrich, supported by Mr. Walker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everyone, from the break. I hope everyone enjoyed the respite from our usual crazy busy schedules. It is, however, good to be back. One of the things that I would like to share this evening is a rereading of our board goals to refresh everyone's memory of what it is that we are striving to accomplish this school year. Also, our board goals are now posted on the wall over there, along with our board agreements, our norms for our behavior when we interact with one another, both at board meetings and outside of board meetings. And also the parents' rights are also posted on the wall of the boardroom. So we have 4 key board goals that we have set for ourselves this year. The first board goal is to develop and implement new board member onboarding. The board will establish an ad hoc committee to develop an onboarding process for new board members, and we have already completed this process. So thank you to our onboarding committee for that work. It's important when we have new board members that we have a process through which we can acclimate them to this important work. And we've achieved that. Another goal for our board has been to improve data literacy. The board will continue to grow our understanding of how data on student learning, growth, and achievement is collected, disaggregated, and used to inform district decision-making and the services we provide our students. That is a goal from September through the end of June, and that is in process. We have a second category of board goals, and that is in the area of exploring innovation. One of those goals, subcategories underneath that goal, is to monitor academic achievement. The board will ask the superintendent to provide quarterly reports to review metrics to ensure student learning needs are being met, and to ensure that the district is actively working to provide equitable programming and support services across all buildings for both learning remediation and acceleration. And we'll be hearing one of those reports this evening. And also in the category of exploring innovation, to explore the Michigan Merit curriculum options, the board, led by the Legislative Committee, will explore ways in which the Michigan Merit Curriculum state graduation requirements allow for exceptions, substitutions, interpretations, and/or special permission to pilot programs that our school district seeks to implement that align with our profile of a lifelong learner, district goals for student growth, learning, achievement, and career readiness, informed by and coinciding with year 2 of the FPS strategic planning process. And this work began in September and is continuing through the end of this school year in June. We are, you'll hear in the report later that we're moving forward on that on that goal as well. Board goal number 3, execute on vision and strategy, the profile of a lifelong learner policy alignment. Last year, as part of the strategic planning process, the district created and began to implement a profile of the lifelong learner, which you can see here and in all of our buildings. And we feel that it's important that we check our policies, our board policies, and make sure that our policies are in alignment, excuse me, with the new profile of a lifelong learner. So the board, led by the policy committee, will review all board policies to ensure that all policies are in alignment with our new FPS profile of a lifelong learner. And that is September 2022 throughout the summer of 2023, as well as updating our Farmington Public Schools vision and mission statements. The board will work together with the superintendent and members of his team to update the FPS vision and mission statements to ensure that they are in alignment with our district's new profile of a lifelong learner. And that work also is in process. Our goal was September 2022 through June of 2023, and I have had the opportunity to participate in those committees working on developing the mission and vision statements, so I can testify that that work is also underway. And finally, we had a 4th board goal of community engagement. And we've been working as a community engagement and communications committee since last year to ready ourselves to host some community dialogues. The board will create 4 opportunities for in-depth collaborative discussion together with all interested members of the community around topics that have been expressed by the community as areas of concern regarding our schools. These will occur during the 2022-23 school year, and we will be led by neutral facilitators. We had our first last month on school safety, and our second is actually next week on March 14th, which we'll hear about in a little bit from the Communication Community Engagement Committee. So we have already completed some of these goals, and on all of the others are in process and are making good progress toward their accomplishment. With that, let's move on to items from the Secretary. Mr. Walker.
Thank you. The board has received communications regarding the board and community dialogues, Farmington High School's extraordinary principal and teachers, school policy, a Young Fives program, and board comment on public comment. Communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided. A list of correspondence can be found in the board packet, which is available on the FPS website.
Thank you. Let's see. Legislative update. Mr. Rich.
Thank you. At this point in time, the one thing I want to bring up is in the governor's budget, which she's presented, includes free breakfast and lunch for all students in the state of Michigan, which would be incredible. I know that's something that we have been talking about a lot here in the district, here in the county. I know that as of March 1st, the 5,500 kids who are on the reduced lunch plan or at the reduced lunch level are now receiving fully free breakfast and lunch, which is an incredible step, especially for those students being the ones who are typically the ones who are experiencing lunch debt. This is such a great stride in equity and making sure that our students are having food in their bellies, they are ready and able to learn. And so we are looking forward to seeing the House and Senate put these actions into actual legislation and getting that done and passed through the budgeting process. I know that State Representative Kelly Breen had been planning to be here tonight, but unfortunately I think is still held up in Lansing. But we look forward to inviting her and all of our other state legislators to a future board meeting to present and introduce themselves to our community, especially if they hadn't previously represented our district.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. That's really exciting news. Next, we have our district updates. Dr. Delgado.
Thank you, Dr. Blau, and good evening, everyone. Glad to have our power back on at all of our schools and certainly this building so we can come to you and stream to you tonight. You may not realize it, but as late as Sunday, 7:30 at night, we had 4 schools that were still without power, and so I want to publicly thank Jim Pierce, our Assistant Director of Facilities and Operation, John Barth in the back here, our wonderful director, and then the entire crew of our maintenance crew and our operations staff who all through the weekend were attending to power outages and checking our schools and making sure that we could get ready for this week. So thank you to all of you, and we're glad to be back online. I have several things, so bear with me tonight. So congratulations to all of our winter athletics and our competitors. So we have both at middle school and high school, we have some remaining contests, and good luck to our high schools. We have some remaining competitions. We actually have, I believe this evening, both North Farmington and Farmington men's basketball are competing, not against each other yet, but if they win, they will face each other in the district championship. So good luck to both of those teams. We also have some of our young men who are in the swimming state competition that's coming up, as well as some of our young women. Our Farmington United gymnastics team actually won regionals and are heading to the state competition. So congratulations to all of them. And we have our middle schoolers, even though they don't have culminating competitions, they have some remaining contests left. So we know the value that athletics and competition brings to all of our young people's lives. Also want to congratulate many of our musicians. We had over 90 musicians who competed in solo and ensemble. And with the winter storm, that part of it was canceled. They're rescheduling some of that, but they're preparing for that. We were going to have a percussion ensemble this evening, but we had a couple of sick kiddos, so we'll bring them back at a future board meeting as well. Of course, can't forget our hackbots. We would never do that for FIRST Robotics. And so they braved the winter storm last Friday and Saturday at Milford High School, as did Dr. Blau, who made it there. They competed at the FIRST Robotics competition. They had a record of 6-6. They ranked 13 out of 38 teams in the state and came home with an award for Innovation in Control award. And so one of the things that I just wanted to, for those of you who are not as familiar with robotics, I wanted to read to you their mission and vision because it's so much more than just a competition. And so on our own Hackbots website, so our mission is to inspire, empower, and create a bridge between school and the corporate world by building essential leadership skills and providing hands-on experience in STEM via FIRST Robotics. So that's an incredible mission for young people to really develop those leadership skills, to partner with local businesses, and to see this collaborative approach. Their vision statement is a community. They are a community focused on improving the future through STEM exposure at an early age. And if you've been to any robotics competition, whether it's our little ones at elementary, I know we have a huge team at Hillside and many other schools, to our middle schools who we presented here, as well as high school, you know that it really is an alliance. You have the Red Alliance, the Blue Alliance, it's a team, it's competitive, but yet it's also collaborative. And so we have well over 60 individuals, I think, on our high school team, upwards of a few hundred in our entire district that are participating in robotics. And I believe the name of our robot is Toothless, if I'm...
Oh, I don't remember.
I think it's
I didn't
Toothless
hear
is the
that
name
this
of our robot. And I'm sure we will have them back. So good luck to our FIRST Robotics, our Hackbots. I'll be with them in a couple of weeks down at Cass Tech, and we wish them well. Also had a wonderful recommendation from one of our board members that suggested that possibly in my superintendent updates that I periodically give the board and the community safety updates. And so I thought that was a great idea, so just want to share that. So working with Mr. Tom Shelton, our Director of Safety, as well as our school resource officers, I see Officer Kobernick in the back here. We have done quite a bit of work on safety infrastructure as well as safety training. So through the bond work, and we have the installation of surveillance cameras that they're going to be brought to you. It's one of the items, the action items tonight that have law enforcement connectivity. And so not only putting surveillance cameras in our elementary and STEAM building where they previously were not in existence, but beefing up our high schools as we do our audits and our walkthroughs with school resource officers and look at sight lines and ways to enhance our current surveillance. Mr. Shelton coordinated with the Farmington Hills Fire Department and Beaumont to train 60 of our leaders. All of our administrators, supervisors, directors in the district received Stop the Bleed training, and we received kits that we have in every single classroom with tourniquets and taught us how to administer properly a tourniquet and Stop the Bleed training. And this is a train the trainer model that will be then rolled out district-wide. We're also in the process of installing two-way film on all interior windows of classrooms so the teacher and the students can see out. The potential perpetrator cannot see in, and so that's in the process of part of our safety infrastructure that we're utilizing. We've also delivered crisis bags as well as what are called go buckets to every classroom and location, and we're improving communication systems, through grants, radios, devices, communication protocols as we kind of prepare for our safety drills. And then we also, I think we mentioned before, we did apply for and receive a grant, a school safety grant that enhances our building site mapping that we're doing not only with our school resource officers, but with professionals in the safety industry, in law enforcement. So safety is a standing agenda item on all of our meetings with our principals, with our administrators, and it's something that we're committed to long-term for the training. And of course, you know, we began this year training over 1,200 staff in our ALICE protocols. So we're very proud of that work. A big thank you to Tom Shelton, who is in a new position as Director of Safety and Athletics. So that's one update, but wait, there's more. So it is March's Reading Month, and so I want to highlight our wonderful book, our One School, One Book. So this is Scylla Lee Jenkins, Future Author Extraordinaire. And so this is a wonderful book. I hope everyone is reading this as a family. I am so type A that I can't even read a children's book without putting notes and flags and highlights and margin notes. So sorry, that's just me, but I'm really enjoying Scylla Lee Jenkins. And so no spoiler alerts. I'm not going to give it away if you're reading, but I will just say this. Scylla, Priscilla, does not like her name. She'd prefer to be called one of a few things. Ruby is one name that she would prefer. She thinks she needs a better name to be an author extraordinaire. So Ruby is one name, and she wants maybe to be called Ruby because it's a pretty name. She would like Claudia because Claudia, she says, is a cool name, and we agree.
You know, and when I was in school, I wish I had that book because Claudia was not a cool name. And
Well,
so I'm reading the book also, and this is like, yes. And my first question to her was, well, what did you think about the cool names?
Absolutely. Well, Claudia is a cool name, according to Priscilla here. Or she wants to be called Supernova because a supernova is bright and it's shiny and it's big. And so again, no spoiler alerts, but the goal is she wants to become a famous writer before her mother has her baby sister, who she affectionately calls the Blob. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to give you any more, but one book, One School, One Book. Please read it. Read it with your family. Let's celebrate literacy. Let's celebrate reading. And a huge thanks to our entire team, really including Jim White, who's our district media coordinator, who really spearheads this effort and does it with such passion and enthusiasm. So very excited about March's Reading Month. I know I've been reading to classes. I know Ms. Smith, as usual, has been out and about in full costume at the schools, and so she's excited about that. And so we're all celebrating March's Reading Month. And then just a few more things. I just want to share a few things. So we have a lot of wonderful things that are happening in our district and outside of our district. On March 16th, we have an incredible opportunity. We have what we call, and Mrs. Hendrickson will like this, we have an authentic task. We have an authentic engagement experience. On March 16th, we have experiential learning for our students in CTE classes, in Algebra 2, and in economics. So we have an opportunity to be included, our students, in the district bond sale process, including a pre-program to inform our students about bonds and how the process works. So they will actually be in the room virtually, streaming live from St. Louis with our bond underwriter, Stiefel, and our counsel, Miller Canfield. They're going to provide an overview of what a bond is and show the actual live pricing in the bond, which is they're offering to investors on a large screen. So students will also be provided about information about careers in these fields. So we're in our second series of selling the bonds that the voters think you approved, $30 million, I believe it is. And so this all started with a conversation that Mrs. Kaminsky and I were having with Stiefel, and we would love for our students to understand this process, and they had done this before in other schools, and so they already had the lesson plan, and so we made it happen for our students. And so a huge thank to Nyasha Boyd, who we may hear from, I think, later tonight, as well as Colleen Stam and Christy Fifield, who have done a wonderful job of recruiting these students from these classes to give them this authentic task, this authentic engagement, this experience of understanding what a bond is and how they price it. So that's happening on March 16th. On April 1st through the 3rd, yours truly and Dr. Blau are proud to be presenting at the National School Boards Association in Orlando. We have a session that is called Trust, Collaboration, and Deep Commitment, Building a Unified Executive Leadership Team for Your District. And so we're prepared to present to the entire country, anybody who wants to come to our session, about the work we've done as a board over the last year and a half. And so we're not perfect. We're still working on things, but we are proud of the work that we've done with our quarterly retreats, with our team development, with our trust, with our governance model, with our communication models, and we're going to go down there and tell our story because we're proud of Farmington Public Schools and this Farmington School Board. So we are excited to do that. April 25th, Mr. Walker and I have been invited to Oakland University for a civility and engagement project. And so I know we'll talk a little bit later about the community engagement dialogues, but our own former Dr. Bob Maxfield reached out, and Dr. Dulio, who is our facilitator for our community engagement sessions. They appreciate so much the blueprint of what we're trying to do with our community dialogues that they asked if we would share this with other districts. So they're doing a workshop with other districts, and they've asked for Mr. Walker and I, if we're available on April 25th, to come and speak to them. And so happy to do it. We're proud of that work and the outreach that our board committee has. It's already been mentioned, next Tuesday is our next session. The first session was on school safety. Next Tuesday, March 14th, from 6:30 to 8:30 right here. The topic is social media and the impact on the adolescent brain. And so we're hoping to get a lot of parents, a lot of teachers, people who can engage with our Board of Education about social media and the community challenges that we have. But wait, there's more. On April 26th, our own John Barth, Mr. Barth, who's in the back here, who's very humble and wouldn't toot his own horn, but he has been asked to present at the annual conference of the Michigan School Business Officials. He's going to be presenting about our hybrid custodial program. It's one of the first programs. There are a couple other districts who are looking at a hybrid program really to try to address the cleanliness, the hygiene, as well as the kind of ownership of schools. And we've had really positive results in our hybrid custodial model, so they've asked John to come speak, and he's going to speak about that at Farmington. And last but certainly not least, it is my honor to recognize one of our board members. We are very proud to receive from the Michigan Association of School Boards. It says, we're proud of board members who use their valuable time to improve their leadership effectiveness by completing individual and board developmental courses. They're going to list all the award recipients on their website on or before March 10th, and I'm pleased to announce that Mr. Donald Walker has received the Level 2 Award of Merit. So congratulations to Mr. Walker. And as you know, this board is already a certified board, but they keep progressing, continual improvement, and so we're very proud of that. That shows a deep and longstanding commitment to each other, to this board and to this district. And so this is not all said to brag. This is just simply to demonstrate that this is not a passive board. This is not a passive administration. We're change agents, and we're working hard every day on behalf of close to 9,000 students and their families. So that is my superintendent update.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Delgado.
And I can keep going if
Yes.
you'd like. All
Go
right.
right ahead.
So next up for district updates is a Schools of Choice update. This is a great example of a future board agenda item that was brought up by a board member that we'd love to get an update on Schools of Choice. And so I'll invite to the podium Dr. Kelly Coffin to give us a Schools of Choice update.
Good evening, everyone. Excited to be here to provide the board a brief update on where we are with our School of Choice efforts. First, I wanted to make sure that the board and the community is aware of all the promotional efforts that our school community relation department, led by Ms. Diane Bauman, put together to not only promote Farmington Public Schools as a whole, but also our Farmington Online, and then really recognizing the great work that's happening in our classroom. I'm going to take a moment, fingers crossed, to play the commercial that was created for this.
Farmington Public Schools is accepting Schools of Choice applications for Oakland County residents for both in-classroom and online in a diverse community. Our profile of a lifelong learner is a promise to our students on who they will become, while consistently scoring above average on assessments with teachers and staff who care and provide a nurturing environment. Go online at farmington.k12.mi.us to make Farmington Public Schools your schools of choice. Farmington Public Schools is accepting...
Sorry, I know it was good, Diane, sorry. So just to give you an idea, including district postcards that were mailed, ads on Facebook, TV 10, and the Civic Theater advertisements, banners, and then insert in the Farmington Press. So the first part of our School of Choice process includes the opportunity for our current Farmington families to choose between buildings. So you can see here by level, a total of 159 applications were received for intra-district schools of choice, and we allow families to give their first, second, and third choice and do the best we can to make that an option for them. This happens, the windows cross over by 1 week, you'll see, but we have 2 weeks that we can make those placements and give our current families the opportunity to transfer. This year, we received 223 applications. You can see where those applications were submitted and what schools were the first choice for for families wanting to select Farmington Public Schools. There you can see the window closed in January 10th, and we have informed our families that they have a space in the district per their acceptance based on the criteria. This is up about 18% from last year, which is a positive sign. Some of that is we included 10th grade this year, and we did see a little bit of a bump, and we did open up for 11th grade. Anyone interested in our IB program, we had a couple of applicants there. Again, also offering opportunities to join our remote and virtual paths for students in grades kindergarten through 8th. And so with this increase in student enrollment, it's a potential revenue to the district of just around $2 million. This is not necessarily school of choice, but I thought while I was up here, I'd give you an update on some other programs that we offer. This year, as you know, Farmington STEAM Academy, each year we ask families they can participate and submit their interest. We had 666 applicants this year. We were able to fill 51 slots. Those families do stay on a waiting list if they would like to, and we will again go to that waiting list once school starts in September in case there were any changes with current families or families that had first accepted. Farmington Early Childhood Center. So this is fresh on our mind because we just had a visit today to Farmington Early Childhood Center, and it is just an amazing facility. And so Kirsten, the director, gave us some additional information that I added in here. So you can see, she gave us a little bit of a historical data. So in 2021, 2022, we had about 475 students. You can see this year we're at 544 students. So that's really, we're about at capacity. One of the things that I'm very impressed with Kirsten's work is that she is very she listens to our families and pays very close attention to where those wait lists are. So just this year, she made some changes to some programs to accommodate our families who wanted more full-day programs or half-day AM programs. She already shared her plan for next year to make similar adjustments as she monitors where we have families waiting to come into our program. So the other thing that she wanted to make sure we shared is while we have 544 students enrolled, we also serve 140 students ages 0 to 3 through our Child Find efforts. So she shared that space with us and all of our practitioners that work and support our students in that age. So it's a full house there, and it's very busy and very exciting. So she projects that we will be full. Right now, we are at 248 out of 310 of our tuition spots, and she does anticipate reaching full enrollment capacity, and again, paying attention to those wait lists and doing what she can do to accommodate our families. So that, in a nutshell, is our school of choice and other information. I do have to do a shout out to Ms. Christian Alexander. She is really the brains behind the organization of all that school of choice information, and so couldn't do that without her help and support.
I know this does not have anything to do with school of choice, but could you let the audience know how it is important to know that Visions also has a huge waiting list as well? You have parents that are really falling over to get into Visions.
That's a great point, Ms. Smith. And I think one of the things that I hope people take away from this, including our vision programs and being able to serve at capacity there and with people waiting, is that we are a destination district for families from birth all the way through 26 and everywhere in between. And we're very proud of that. And thank you for that reminder, because we do we have an incredible program for our 18 to 26-year-olds. Absolutely. Go ahead.
As it relates to the STEAM,
Yes.
you know, it is so very popular. I actually did a tour last week. So is there any thoughts about providing the STEAM curriculum throughout the district? Just the numbers that you mentioned show that there's a lot of people who are interested in having that type of curriculum.
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. One of the things that our families like about STEAM is it is a K-8 school, and so they do appreciate that. And as far as with the 6th through 8th grade specifically, in all of our middle schools, we're starting next year with our 6th grade to do some training on project-based learning with the New Tech Network. So yes, our plan is to expand that and also look at our elementary schools in a way that we can replicate some of the great teaching and learning that our families are requesting. Thank you.
Did you said how many applications there were, but did you report how many spots there are? As far as what is the percentage? Like,
For STEAM, you're talking about?
No,
Or
for
school choice?
the district, the school of choice.
So 223 applicants, which is about 18% above where we were last year.
But how many do we accept?
These are all the ones that in our first screening we have accepted. There may be a couple, a handful that maybe don't work out, but this is the number that we've accepted.
So we don't have a waiting list for schools of choice? Everybody that applies gets accepted?
Pending that they meet the criteria that we have set, yes.
And is it like building capacity and class size and things like that?
Yeah, so they get accepted into the district, and then we allow them a choice. We do, as we know, we have some of our elementary schools are full, and other schools we have space. So we communicate with each family. We accept them in the district as long as they meet our criteria. We are a limited school of choice district, so we don't accept everyone into the building that they request first, but we do our best to accommodate them. So those calls are happening right now.
Okay, and then the online program, is there a draw for that, and is there a limit to the capacity for that?
There's not necessarily a limit, I would say. And we did get, not as many as we had hoped to have, but this is our first year of advertising it as school of choice, so we probably had a little under 20 students who've requested that K through 8.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one more question. What is the wait list for early childhood?
So it's by class and by program, so it depends. So the one that I referred to where Kirsten made the change, we had 20 families on a waiting list, so she thought that was significant. We might have a handful of families here and there. They always have an option to join another one. One of the examples she shared today was the PM on Tuesdays and Thursdays usually doesn't have a waiting list, or maybe they have a smaller number of students. So she's looking at taking that, making it a full day, so then that way we can take care of the wait list for those. So she's watching those. Usually there's a handful, but they're only for very specific programs. We always begin allowing our current families first choice, get them in first, and then we open it up. But again, she's very accommodating and wanting to get anybody that wants to be in there. But there are some waiting lists, I would say, with a handful of students in some of those half-day programs.
Sometimes people move into the district, like over the summer and things like that, and because we have a school of choice, do you have, if somebody lives in the district, you can't say our schools are full, so how do you balance that school of choice and keeping spaces for that transition?
So really, we have our watch schools that we know that are continually full, and we look back at historical data. So if somebody, for example, requested one of those, you just see the number of requests, we would ask them to take their second or third choice. And for our external, we always place siblings first, both intra-district and school of choice. We place all siblings in the building where they've requested, and then in those schools that we know will be full, we ask families to consider their second and third choice.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Kaufman.
you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have our literacy and numeracy goal progress report. I know Dr. Blau mentioned that as part of the board goals, to have periodic updates, quarterly updates, and so looks like Mrs. Hendrickson and Mrs. Suarez are coming up to the podium.
Good evening. So we are here to share the mid-year progress report on literacy and numeracy, which is part of the extended learning plan as required by Section 98B. I'm Nanette Suarez, the K-12 Data and Assessment Coordinator and Coach.
And I'm Margaret Hendrickson, the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment.
As part of the extended learning plan, we have our goals that our K-8 students will meet or exceed expected growth on the benchmark assessment. So our benchmark assessment in Farmington is the NWEA MAP growth test. NWA says that 50% of the students should meet their growth targets. We in Farmington have set a target of 65% of our students to meet their projected growth. In addition, looking at 90% of our students meeting or growing. And while our goals are focusing on growth, we are going to also share some achievement data tonight too.
So we will first discuss literacy update, then we'll do a mathematics update. And as part of both of those updates and looking at the growth and achievement data, we will have certain points in which we'll stop and ask questions where there are some natural transitions as we move from one piece of data to another. Okay? So as we start with looking at literacy, it's important that we've set goals, but we've also put a plan in place aligned to those goals. So just as a quick summary, at the elementary level, we've spent significant time really focusing on the scope and sequence of our foundational skills instruction last year and this year. And we've been using a core phonics survey assessment 3 times a year at our K2 levels in order to progress monitor where students are on their foundational skills. We've also been continuing to use additional foundational skill resources, sound walls and secret stories that we started last year into this year. And our teachers K-5 are continuing to use the guided reading materials and decodable texts that we purchased last year to support fluency and comprehension. We also have at each of the elementary buildings an instructional coach to support teachers in their growth and student learning. And we also have an elementary intervention coordinator that's working alongside with the buildings to support Tier 3 intervention for students. As we think about elementary and then secondary, our middle schools have updated to a new middle school units of study, updated version of what we were using. And our our secondary literacy coordinator, Christy Fifield, is meeting with them 4 times a year, as well as some professional development Oakland schools, to deepen their understanding of the units of study and how to support students to meet them where their needs are. We also are doing professional development in middle school, high school around independent reading and book clubs to make use of the classroom libraries that we've purchased over this last year to put into our classrooms. We also have added additional ELA staff at each of our middle schools to support push in and pull out tier 3 support. What we've also layered into that is Chris O'Brien has been supporting getting high dosage tutoring into elementary and secondary buildings in order to support our students. So with this as a snapshot of some of the work, we wanted to take a movement into what is our data looking like, first relative to growth in literacy.
So looking at the numbers, right? So 56% of our students met or exceeded their projected growth from fall to winter of this school year. Last year, we were at 49%, so we have an increase of 7. Again, though, the national norm is 50%, so we're above that right now. This number looks at all of our students grouped together, K through 8, and so we're going to take a look at this by grade level. So the yellow line that you see down the middle there is our 56%, so we can compare to the all students. The numbers you see on the side in orange are the numbers comparing to where we were last year. Same time period of fall to winter. So you'll notice for all of our grades that we show that we increased or maintained the percent of students meeting their growth projections. What you will also notice, our largest increases were in kindergarten, second grade, and third grade. And then, in addition to grade levels, we're also going to look at student groups.
And before we move to student groups, as we're looking at this data, we're making connections back to the aligned work that we have in place. So when we look at our K2, K3 data and we see those double-digit increases, we can take a look back at our foundational skill work that we've been doing over the last 2 years, the instructional coaching work, the new resources that we've put in place. And so as we look at the data, we're taking a look at how can we tie that back to the potential work we've done, but also what the potential next steps are. So at the end of today, you'll hear about, well, we just heard an update on where we are in our work, what are some next steps we'll take in light of the data. But really wanted to call out the impressive work and the compelling work that our K2, K3 staff have been doing to support our learners who might not have had preschool experiences prior to the pandemic, or who started with us as kindergartners during the year of pandemic. So this is very compelling for us.
Looking at our student groups, again, we gave you the all students so that you can look at a comparison with the other student groups. So again, the orange numbers on the side are the fall to winter for each, comparing the fall to winter from this year to last year. Again, you'll notice for all our student groups that we show increases in the percent of students who met their growth projections. I want to highlight that we have some double-digit increases for our Black African American students, economically disadvantaged students, and our students with IEPs. Another celebration is that if you look at all of our student groups, they're all performing above that national norm of 50%.
And when we look at the growth of our student groups and we look back at our state assessment data, each of our buildings were rated significantly above average in the performance of our student groups, which we think is connected to the ability to move and grow our students. But we'll come back to a little bit more of that as well. So at this moment, we want to take a pause. And if there's a question based on our percent met growth for grade levels and our student groups. Dr.
I just would like just some clarification on what Tier 3 support means and what high-dosage tutoring looks like.
So when we think about our teaching and learning structure, we talk about an MTSS system, where Tier 1 is your core instruction that each and every student engages in to learn the content. And then you think about Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports are additional small group and individual support for students who might need more support in a remediation at grade level or acceleration. And so our elementary intervention coordinator are supporting the interventionists in the buildings and supporting our staff in developing interventions for students that need pretty high cadence of intervention support in order to accelerate their learning. And then high dosage tutoring is kind of new in the field of education, where we actually provide high-frequency, small group instruction around high-need areas for students. And so Chris O'Brien has been working with a few different companies to supply some curriculum and tutor support so students get additional support, Tier 3, beyond what we might provide with our interventionist that we have.
Ms. Fox?
A couple of things. So with the tutoring that you just spoke of, is that available for all grades?
So Chris O'Brien is supporting the buildings and rolling that out. We have hit some hiccups with the number of available tutors with the companies that we've contracted with because they're in such high need. So he right now is working with different buildings, working with those vendors to get those pieces up and running.
So what grades are running now?
So we have certain elementary buildings and middle school buildings. And he would have more of the specifics, and we could provide an update to board about that, maybe in a board brief.
I have one more thing to ask. So when you spoke about the disadvantaged students who have IEPs, African American parent students and so forth, that they showed a greater increase. Can you kind of give me or the board some information as to what was going on, what was happening in those classrooms? What were you all thinking about to push something out to where they had a greater numbers?
So what we've been looking at as we respond to this data is really looking at good quality research-based practice that supports the building of, for example, foundational skills in our K-3 classrooms, which are responsive to meeting the needs of all learners and specifically meeting the needs of students who are Black African American, economically disadvantaged, students with IEPs. So we've really been looking at research best practice for Tier 1 instruction that is supportive of each and every learner in the classroom and provides different modalities, forms of instruction. And so, for example, with foundational skills, we've seen a nice growth in our student groups.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Weems?
Yeah, just if you could help me understand, maybe we know, maybe we don't know, how the state comes up with its target or goal of 50%. I think to maybe the average person that may seem a little low. And if you could help us understand how we arrived at 65%, I appreciate that we want to always do significantly better than the norm. I would like to understand that. And then the third piece, and I'm sorry to be a tri-part question, but I want to understand what is the expected period of time that we would expect to move from a 50% to a 65% and beyond.
You can answer the first part,
Yeah.
I'll do the second.
Okay. So the 50% comes from the NWA national norms. So with their studies, when they're looking at students across the U.S. and some of the international schools, they're saying that 50%, the way they've created their system, is 50% of the students should be hitting their growth targets. The reasons why we tend to look at growing at a different rate at 65% relates to when we look at the achievement data in a couple slides, is while 50% is the norm for NWEA, when they did a linking study to our MSTEP assessments, our state assessments, our students need to be higher than that 50%. So that's where our numbers are coming for our goal.
So NWA is a norm criterion reference assessment. So that is where we're getting the understanding that it's 50% of students don't make their projected growth and 50% do, based on how that assessment is designed and how it's administered and what the population of students, how they perform on that assessment. About 50% of students make their expected growth. And what NWA will talk about is how do you make significant shifts in your classroom and system, practice, structure, and culture to move your students beyond the expected norm. And so what we are doing is looking at our current practice at the classroom and the system level, so we make significant shifts in how we do the work of teaching and learning so that we move all of our kids to where we want them to go. And so we're not meeting the predictive norms. So we've been analyzing our data at what percent of students meet their projected norms. And 50% is the national norm. We tend to hit between 51 and 58, depending on the grade level and subject and classroom. And so 65% is a goal that is a SMART goal for us to try to manage towards each and every classroom, each and every grade level, and the district. And we have classrooms where 71% of students meet their projected growth, or 90% of students meet their projected growth. So in terms of a timetable, there isn't a scientific timetable on how you get there. What we need to do is aggressive enough urgency work of where our current status is to shift structure, culture, and practice in the system so kids do not have opportunity gaps when they come to Farmington Public Schools and as they move up the system. So all the work we're doing is around system work that will support the classroom work to support each and every learners. And so we look at best practice. And so to move beyond the norms and the national norms, we have to think about the small and significant changes. So when we talk about middle school teaming, when we talk about doing project-based learning at all grades in middle school as we move forward, as we think about X, Y, and Z, it's about that urgency to shift the way we do teaching and learning so we can bypass what is normed.
Ms. Smith?
Sorry.
I'm having difficulties hearing today, but it's okay. First, I want to thank you for finally coming and giving this presentation. But I also want to say thank you to those that have been actively involved, whether it's on this side or even with Dr. Greenstein and I having constant conversations and building a relationship to find out where do we build and regroup and do some things. As a community, I feel that we have to be accountable to share this information and admit if we are failing. If we are failing as a board by not listening, or if we are failing and not communicating with the members of the community. But I want to say that I appreciate this because I see your what you're saying about the disadvantaged students and the IEPs. So what are we going to do to fix this problem? And as you know, I don't know if you know, I've been working with people on city council in Farmington Hills. This community only has 7% of those that are financially unhealthy. So what are 7%? And that study came out in November of 2022. So with the 7%, that's not many. And then also, are you saying that students that are from out of the district are coming in here that are not performing? Or is it just, no, I'm just asking.
No, we aren't
so
making
is it
any
just,
distinction.
right, so is it just, because see, you know, when you ask questions, people get defensive and think that you're attacking, and I don't want that to be the case here. So I'm just asking, because when you ask questions, that's how you learn. You know, people can't get defensive when you ask questions. So what I'm asking is, are the students that are showing, the African-American students or the students of color, are those students that are those coming into the district, or have they been here all along?
So this data does not disaggregate that. From my conversations with Annette, historically, our students who are coming from outside the community and within inside the community perform similarly. That there's not a huge disparity, that's a explanation for why we are where we are. We have students that come to us in kindergarten performing at a certain level when they come in, and as we look at grade level, as we continue to go to some more data, we have to see what's happening across K-12 in the system. And I think to what are we going to do, when we come to the end of the presentation, we're going to talk about a few additional steps in specifically literacy and mathematics that we're going to be taking in response to this data.
And now, we do know that the students from 3 through 4 who have been out for over the 2-year time frame, what are we doing to help them? Because we've seen the literacy for your math from K through 2nd, which was phenomenal. That presentation was great. Then you had the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, which was also great. So it's like that cake, and somebody sneaks and cut it and take it out, and then take the extra icing and cover it up. But then when you pick it up, you know that cake has been cut. What are we going to do to those students that are struggling and suffering? And are we looking at possibly starting a financial literacy program for students from whatever age on up?
So I think it would be good these are great questions, to step forward and see some of the other data, and then maybe the connections we make to that data and some of the additional steps, and then we can connect back to what we're doing.
Yeah, before you go on, just, I'm just trying to process, and I think I'm trying to say the same thing you're saying in a different way, or just in more layman terms. But just from what we learned about the NWA data, each student has a targeted growth and the way the program works. So if teacher A has students 1 through 25 in the class, each student has their own targeted growth.
Their own starting point and their own growth target.
Right. So when you say that 56% are meeting projected growth, it doesn't mean that the other 44% aren't growing. They just haven't met the number that the program set.
Correct. So, they could still be growing, they just may not have hit the prescribed target from the assessment.
Right, and so that's a computerized target that each student has. And so each teacher gets a printout of each student in their class. And it sounds like we're working on, the things that you're doing is working on the teacher and the whole group teaching and learning, so that fewer students need those additional resources. And so is that a goal of the processes and of the things that you're putting into place, to focus on those things, so that within the classroom, all the students are having their needs met, and so therefore there's fewer students that need the pull-out resources, the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 additional support.
Yeah. Oftentimes we focus on Tier 2 and Tier 3 is responsive, Tier 1 is proactive. And so we're really working to firm up our Tier 1 to reduce the need for Tier 2 and 3, but we will always have all of those layers. So the percent meeting growth is only one growth metric within NWEA. And that was aligned to our extended learning goals that we set per the legislation, that we want to see our students meet and or exceed their projected growth. But that's only one part of the story. And so, yeah.
Can I just share something before you move on, just to go back to Ms. Fox? Had a couple of questions. The high dosage tutoring that our Director of Student Support Services is working with our MTSS teams on, based on the need of the schools, the grade levels vary. And so with limited tutors, they could be in 3rd grade, they could be in 2nd grade, it could be in 4th grade. And so you would ask, which grade levels are we experiencing the high dosage tutoring? So it's looking at the school and your most needy students with respect to their gaps. So the high dosage tutoring is there. And then the second piece that we had talked about is this idea of kind of data literacy, which is wonderful to see kind of the development of data literacy. And Ms. Hendrickson's going to talk about a couple of the different metrics that we use, not only the NWAA growth metrics, but some additional metrics that will help as well.
That kind of brings me to one other question during this discussion, and my other thought is that what do we do in terms of district-wide assessment? How does that, I know that we do that in the buildings, how does that align with this development here? How does that align?
So NWA is aligned to our standards for ELA and mathematics, our state standards. And the assessments that staff provide for students as part of unit assessments or summative assessments are also aligned to those standards. So the assessments we give daily as part of instruction really helps our teachers monitor where students are, make instructional decisions to help students grow on those standards. And so that's the classroom level assessment. NWA is what we call a satellite data that gives us a outside of the classroom monitoring of how our students are growing and gives us a sense of where they are on the standards as well.
There are multiple data sets, multiple metrics that we're utilizing. Tonight is really about NWAA. Yeah. The other question you had, Ms. Fox, was, to what do we attribute the double-digit gains? We always have to be cautious in what we attribute as being the kind of correlation to increase, but the work that we've done the last couple of years on positioning, physical positioning of students, authentic engagement of tasks, we believe that there's some dividends that are paid there. We were at the Early Childhood Center this morning on a cabinet visit. You would have no idea which preschool was a tuition preschool or a GSRP or a Head Start preschool. You would have no idea which students were coming from poverty or not. And so that's because of the positioning, of the way that we have the students positioned, the way that we have them interacting, that they're all receiving a guaranteed and viable play-based high scopes curriculum. And so when we do that really K-12 all the way up, we are anticipating these kind of positive results. So correlation is always a little bit tricky to definitively say, but we do attribute that to a lot of the work that we've been doing.
Donald?
This may be something you'll address further in the presentation, but looking at your data, does it disaggregate down to, does the grade data disaggregate down to those individual clubs on the other side?
Yes.
I'm hearing an awful lot about where you're meeting students individually, so I'm assuming it does in terms of your ability to be able to target.
So the data that we're bringing,
questions.
the scope of the data that we bring to the Board of Education is at one level.
Right.
The data analysis we do at the district building and classroom level allows us to go much deeper into student groups by grade level, for example, student groups within a particular classroom or building.
Okay.
So when I look at the NWEA data for my students, because we use the same test where I teach, I can see for each individual student where their strengths were and where their areas of need are based upon that particular test. So that enables me to then group students into small groups. Okay, these 3 students need some help with borrowing and caring. Okay, so I can pull them for some, some small group work on that. And these students need some help with fractions. Okay, so those
That's
students.
where I'm going.
Yeah, so
This is where I'm going.
so I can look at it classroom level. I get that level of detail about each of my students. That's not what they're presenting
Correct.
to us here. They're giving us this level.
No, it's not.
But but yes, as a classroom teacher, the NWEA does provide me with that level of detail.
I would like to see that level of detail. It feels more concrete as opposed to what I hear. It may be just me, but I would like to see what you just said. I would like to see some of that kind of assessment.
So I do meet with teachers. That's the part of my coaching. My job is I will meet with teachers to go through those reports to help them create plans. There are some things about being at a board presentation and being public that we do want to honor the privacy of students. So that's why we don't go into those individual details.
I'm not asking
but like the
for names.
examples of like when I meet with teachers, I'll go through and say, okay, what's your next student in math? Let's look on the learning continuum of, okay, these students are right, right where you want them to be. These students could maybe lead some discussions. These students may need some extra help. So that's how the teachers go into that classroom data piece.
Ms. Heinrich and then Ms. Weems?
But then using that as part of the instruction process and part of the teaching and learning that the district is doing so that the results that are presented, the overall results show our district results. And so those things are, those are things that are, is that correct in saying those are things that are built in to what the teachers are doing and what the district is doing? So when, we get questions, so what are you doing about this? That's the answer of what they're doing about it is all of the instructional practices. And so the teachers are using that, and they're working with the individual students, the whole class instruction, the pull in, pull out, the things like that, so that the district results, we're getting results district-wide. And so that's what our lane is, our vision, is to say, okay, so how are you using this to do, and then present how it's working out. How's that working out for us?
I'm hoping well. I mean,
that's,
you guys got to present next time. I love it. This is good.
That's what this
yes,
is. It's like, this is how it's working out for us. This is what we're doing, and this is how it's working out. So, yes.
So as we started our time together, it was reestablishing a connection to these goals around the percent of students meeting their growth projections as set by the national norms and NWEA. And so we have talked about some of the work to lead into this data. We know that in relative to percent met growth, that as a whole, what we know is that the percent of students meeting or exceeding their growth projections compared to last time this year has increased. What we do know is that our percent of students making projected growth is at or above the national norm, and that on meeting projected growth, our student groups are performing similarly. So you might ask, why then are we seeing performance gaps within achievement? So I want to share with you another piece of data that we get from NWA that also speaks to growth, but is different than percent met growth. NWA has a few different metrics that we can look at. One's called conditional growth percentile rank. So you might want to take a step away from the slide for a minute and just kind of watch my hands, okay? This is me, my teacher coming out. Percent met growth has the student met or exceeded the target set for them, okay? And we're at about the national norm for that. Our student groups perform very similarly on meeting that target. But there is additional data within NWA called conditional growth percentile that tells us the size of their growth relative to the national norm. So our percent met growth, we're at the national norm. Now, what is our growth size like relative to the national norm? So then if you look back at the data slide here, look at that center in green. That is indicating how large our growth size is by grade level relative to the national norm of how much students will generally grow. So what you're noticing is that at certain grade levels, we have high average growth size relative to the norm. We have low average growth relative to the norm. So our students are at the norm and similarly performing on meeting that target, their individual target. But when we look at their overall growth size relative to the norm, do they exceed that target, for example? We have some variability in that growth size by grade level. If you dig into each grade level and look at a student group, like economically disadvantaged, or students with IEPs, or Black and African American, we can start to look at, is the growth size of each student group the same? And what we're noticing is there's variability. There are times at a grade level where our Black African American students have a really high growth size relative to the norm, and other grade levels where it's smaller. And so we don't just look at percent net growth. That is what we're tracking as part of our goal, as part of our extended learning goals. But we also look at grade levels and student groups as to their growth size. Because in order to move achievement, we need to increase growth size, not just did they meet a projected growth. And I say that because we're about to show you the achievement data.
Ms. Williams, you had a question before.
I did. I'm going to reserve it to the end because I think you're going to get there. I think what might be helpful for the board during one of our workshops, because this is helpful. This is meant to be a presentation to us on what we asked for, which is the data. But we need a workshop to dig in more, to really understand how this data is developed bottoms up, and then how you disaggregate it down in order to understand what levers need to be pushed and pulled, right, to move us forward in the direction that we're trying to go in. And I know you're doing that because each of the teachers get to see their own data. You've got groups that are looking at the data and comparing classrooms, and you're comparing schools as well. So I know that you're doing that. I think we want to hear how that's going a bit more and understand what's working well here that can be replicated. How are you replicating that? What instructional practices are happening here? Why aren't they happening there? Where do we need to make some connections? I think that's what I'm hearing anyway, that people might be interested in.
So we know this data point is new for the board. So that's why I want to take a pause where we've been monitoring the target as a board, as part of our established goals. But we also look at growth size, because we need to look at why there's differences in growth size relative to the national norm. Because then what you see when we get into the achievement data is that while we've seen more students meeting their growth projection, the percent of our students at high average achievement performance band has stayed the same. So while our students are percent of students are increasing in meeting their target, we are not seeing an increase in the percent of students at the high average band. Why do we track the high average band? Is because when students are in the high average achievement band, that has a predictability of being proficient on our state assessment. So we track that group. So we're tracking on a bell curve those that are in the 60 percentile rank or above. And we want to get each and every student there. So student groups are performing similar in the percent who met their projected growth. But what I'm about to show you is going to state our student groups are not performing similarly. And that's connected to seeing the growth size that they're making relative to the norm. So if you take a moment and look at literacy, grades K through 8, you'll see on the far left column the percent of students at the high average achievement, anywhere from 45 to 60% of students, depending on the grade level, at our high average. We want to get more kids in that high average because we want to not follow the norm. We want to outperform the norm. On the column,
Just a point of clarification. So the percentage of student at high average, this represents that portion of the bell curve you just showed us on the previous slide, correct?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's that, yes. Whoops. Yes, where that green box is. That's the
Okay.
percent of kids that are there in our system.
Okay, thank you.
So if you look at overall achievement percentile rank, which is the column on the right, that's saying, let's look at second grade, for example. 50% of students are at high average achievement. The achievement percentile rank for that grade level compared to the national norm are indicating our second graders are outperforming 79% of their nationally normed peers. Sometimes I'll hear the board ask, is that number good? How do we know if that's number good or bad? So we don't like the 55% because we want to see 100% of our students at high average, which would be well above the national norm. But we would like to acknowledge that at second grade, for example, our second graders are outperforming 79% of the norm. Not that that's where we want to stop, but just to understand the context of what those percents mean. So if you look at all of those, we're high average in our achievement relative to the national norm, even though that's not where we want to stop and where we want to be. So as you then translate that, not by grade level, but by student group, you'll notice the percent of students at high average are different. There's a disparity, there's a performance gap for our student groups. So we need to be looking at what we're doing to increase the growth size of each of those student groups and all students so we can move achievement. When kids just meet their percent net growth, they kind of stay at their same achievement level they maintain. So yes, we want kids to meet their projected growth, but we want them to exceed it enough with a high enough growth size that they move achievement levels. So we wanted you to know as a board that we're looking at percent net, we're looking at growth size and achievement as we think about all of the hidden dynamics of how this data works and what it tells us that's compelling, whether that compelling is a success or an urgency of what we need to do next. So what we continue to ask ourselves, it's not just an individual classroom culture, structure, and practice. It is how is the building and the systems culture, structure, and practice. This is a system problem, not just an individual classroom problem, as we think about increasing the size of growth so that everyone has equitable access to meaningful learning at high levels. And what do we do in the system that might impact the ability and the opportunity for kids to receive that? Terry.
I'm going back to page 43, and I'm trying to understand.
Which
that's that one, yep. I'm trying to understand the decline, and I'm wondering whether that's a reflection of more targeted programming at the K through 3 level in consideration of the third grade reading requirement and all of that stuff, or if our students start with us and start on a more level playing field, and whether we're noticing that, you know, by the time you get into the next slide, which shows the different demographic groups, like I wonder what that achievement gap looks like at kindergarten versus 8th grade. And if so, because if we see a difference there, then that would tell me that somewhere along the line, we're not meeting kids' needs
And that's
as
what
they,
we're looking at.
right.
And that's what we're looking at. So I have reports that I've printed, and we've really literally started to write that narrative of what happens with our growth size for our students with disabilities, our economically disadvantaged, our Black and African American. What is interesting is you'll see a difference one grade level to another. It's high or low. It's above average and then it's below average. So what we're doing, that's why we're taking a system look, is it's not just about what we do at the classroom level, but there's all these system pieces that we really have to do what we call root cause analysis, where we really look at what are the variety of factors that could be contributing to this, and then how do we peel apart where our priorities are to focus, because you can't do 100 things, but what do you do that'll make the biggest impact? And we're continually asking ourselves that question. It's not a quick and easy solution, but we're continuing to put things into action that's going to support us in the now, but then the bigger movements that are going to support us in the future, like all the work we're doing around innovation.
Ms. Heinrich and then Mr. Walker.
Yeah, I think that you've been talking about, because looking at this, it's like, so what are we going to do about this, like 7th and 8th graders? You know, and so I'm just like thinking on my feet. So I've been hearing things that you're doing with the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We want to hear more about that. And it's just, one of the questions is, when should we start seeing results? And as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of wondering if you go back 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and you look at how those groups did, how many, 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, you know, when they were 1, 2, and 3, where were they? Were they at the same place that our 1, 2, and 3 is now, or did they start out at a different level? And so, you know, is there a connection as far as, because every year it's a different group, so is there a connection between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade now as far as what was going on when they were in 1, 2, and 3?
I will tell you, looking historically, this is the trend. This is what happens in our system and other systems as you move up the grade levels. And so that's why Dr. Coffin really pushes us to think, how are we changing structurally so these things don't happen? And so there, again, no easy answer, but we have a lot of intense urgency conversations about what do we do. It is a normal trend. I am pleased that our 6th, 7th, and 8th are at the 60 percentile, are performing better than 60% of our peers, you know, national norm peers. But I also acknowledge as I go down into that level, there's some urgency pieces there, and there's a lot that tells us something needs to happen when we get into the math data. There's some other things that we need to do. And so again, what do we do that's strategic, that's tactical right now in the short term, but also how do we re-envision and restructure so that all students have equitable access and perform at high levels?
I had a question. Obviously, Farmington isn't the only district who are dealing with numbers like this, as I believe you just mentioned. It's a system thing. Has there been any, in as much as you have the time to maybe do something like this, is there any room for any research nationally where people, other organizations have been taking a look at these kinds of trends and what interventions are being recommended on that kind of level that could possibly play out here in Farmington?
Yes, because they're all based on good research-based practice. So like middle school teaming structure at the middle school is a research-based practice. High dosage tutoring is a practice. Foundational skills, having a systemic approach to that. The student-centered mathematics that we're working on. So all of the things we're doing are similar best practices nationally. But we haven't stopped there, just like Dr. Delgado goes to certain conferences to see what is happening across the country. So does Dr. Coffin, so does myself. We are in high collaboration with the ISD to think about what pieces and parts they might help us think about and reconceive.
So one thing I know we've talked a lot about, Dr. McConaughey's work here with our mindset, and we're working with our building administrators, all of them, in addition to some proof of concept groups. And one of the things you saw in one of a previous slide that Margaret shared was that do our kids have the opportunity to participate in high-level learning experiences? And that is where we're starting, because we are finding that while as students move through the system, there are places where certain groups do not have the same opportunities. And it starts with how we start to think about our learners as high-achieving learners.
So as we think about the literacy data, we're looking at the percent of students that have met their projected growth. We look at the growth size relative to the national norm, and we're looking at achievement. And how does that dynamic of data help us consider next steps and reflect on steps we've taken so far? In the area of mathematics, we have taken steps in order to move the work this year in the area of mathematics. Just as we had some additional supplemental resources that we've integrated into our instruction at in the literacy, we also have that for mathematics at the elementary with different number sense tools that our teachers are using to support mathematics understanding. We have been increasing the number of our teachers at the K2 and now eventually now 3-5 in math recovery training. And we've also been using our instructional coach support at the building level alongside our intervention coordinators, similar to what I discussed in the literacy work. At the secondary level, there's been a lot of work really around Tier 1 instruction and how it supports every student making sense and engaging in meaningful content. So we've been developing common math tasks aligned to the standards. So outside of that NWA data, you were asking about other assessments. We're creating tasks that align to very strategic power standards and analyzing how our kids are doing on those tasks at the middle school and high school level. So that work is in progress. We've been reinvesting in professional learning for our middle school and high school staff through coaching supports, labs, and reinvesting in our programs to really ensure that teachers can see how those can support meeting the needs of all learners, because we've really been focusing on that tier 1. We do have opportunities for high dosage tutoring at the secondary level, as well as we expanded similarly to ELA. We've expanded math support at the middle school level to support tier. Okay. So with some of that work defined, we want to talk about the growth and achievement data for mathematics. Very similar displays to what we saw in literacy and very similar findings. Okay.
So for math, 53% of our students met or exceeded the projected growth from fall to winter. This is the same percentage we were at last year. So it's right at that national norm, right? National norm of 50%. And again, this is the K-8 data, so this is everyone grouped together. So now we're going to take a look at by grade level. So we gave you a similar visual. So the orange line down the center there is for all students at 53%, and then looking at each grade level. The orange numbers on the side are comparing last year, fall to winter, to this year, fall to winter. So here's where we start to see differences in what I talked about during literacy. So in kindergarten through third grade, we see increases in the percent of students who met their growth projections. But then when we look at 5th grade through 8th grade, we start to see that decline. And so that's where we start to figure out what are our next steps? What are we going to do? And that's Margaret's going to address those in a couple of standards. But we also want to show you the student groups for the math data. Same thing, it's 53% up at the top is the all students. And the orange numbers are the comparison last year to this year. Here, what you'll notice different than literacy is that it's very little movement. We also see more differences or gaps between the different subgroups, the student groups than we saw with literacy. And where here, overall, our students are meeting or exceeding their growth projections are right around the national norm, whereas with literacy, we saw that a little bit above. So any questions on these numbers before we do the other data pieces of math?
Yeah, I'm thinking just for literacy, your target was 65%. Did you have the same target for math? Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we haven't met our target. So we're short by 53 to 65, 12%.
We are not where we want to be.
Okay.
Yep.
So, what are we going to do to get those numbers?
That's what we're going to talk about.
Okay.
So we're going to continue to revisit this work we started last year and this year, and then there'll be some next steps that we've been having conversations. So just as we talked about literacy, where we've been monitoring the percent that met growth, we also want to be monitoring their size of growth. So you'll notice at the center, it gives you a snapshot of the size of growth relative to the national norm at each of our grade levels. And you notice that literacy has a strength here relative to mathematics, and that we're seeing that we have low average growth size, even though over 50% of kids in each grade level and student group are meeting their expectation, but they're not making a big enough growth size to really start moving their achievement forward. And we see that as we dig down into our student groups. And so we need to think about how we're structured for mathematics and what our practices are in mathematics. So this is the lead in to take a look at where we are in our achievement. So we are performing very similarly to last year, where about 49% of our students are at high average. And while that fits into the norm data, we want a larger group of kids moving into that high average, because we believe that's what each and every student deserves. So, as we said before, we see student groups perform relatively similar on meeting or exceeding their growth projection. But the students, as we look into grade level and student groups, we're going to see that they're not performing similarly, and we think that this has a strong connection to the growth size that they're making. So again, on the left-hand side, our percent of students at high average achievement range from 40 to 66%. How each of those grade levels perform relative to the national norm is we are outperforming either 51% of the national norm at like 8th grade versus kindergarten, where we're outperforming 93% of the national percent of students national. Performing better than 93% of the nationally normed peers. And again, we don't see similar achievement at each grade level. And we don't see similar achievement performance in our subgroups. So again, what do we have to do in our practice and our structure to shift this as a system and not just rely on individual classrooms doing the work? They do a lot of the work, but the system has to be there to support them and be structured in a way that teachers can do the right work to support students each and every day. We're going to take a pause here.
How do you know that certain students are financially unhealthy?
So families fill out a free and reduced lunch application. And so our food service keeps that information in terms of what percent of kids are free and what percent of kids are reduced. And each of our buildings have different percent of free and reduced lunch.
But as far as test-wise?
So all of our student demographics are shared with the student information system in the sky at the state level called the MSDS. And so when assessment data is done for like state assessment, those demographics are tied to kids so we can disaggregate this data. At the local level within NWEA, the demographics are within NWEA, so we're able to disaggregate that data for NWEA, similar to what we might do for the MSTEP or SAT or PSAT. So the NWEA system has that information on the back end of the system that allows us to disaggregate this data and identify who is in each of these groups.
Thank you.
So the last part of Section 98B does ask us to share out the comparison of our students from in-person to remote. We do have a much smaller group in remote this year, but you'll see the numbers on the left are for reading and the numbers on the right are for math.
We only have about 120 students, K-8, in our remote programs. So at the beginning of the literacy update and the numeracy or mathematics update, we did a snapshot of some of the work that we're doing to impact our students' learning. We have continued to have conversations around this data and other data sets to consider next steps. As the board knows, we are going to be implementing K-2 EL education skills block in the coming school year. We'll be using the differentiated resources for that in grades 3. We are going to be looking at specific grade 3 through 5 literacy professional development to support our striving readers. We will start to preview and recommend a new K-5 core literacy reading and writing instructional resource in the coming year. There is state-supported training called Letters Training, which is a very intensive 2-year foundational skill professional development series, which we are blessed that the state of Michigan is providing that for free of cost to staff members. And we have cohorts of staff that are attending that Letters Training, which provides a really nice learning background to all the K-2 work that we're doing around foundational skills. We also, in light of our middle school literacy data, we're collecting data right now on our literacy support model with those additional ELA staff members at the middle school. We're looking at the students that participated in that, looking at what their data says. We're looking at the structure of the model and the practice and identifying whether we have to make shifts for this semester and or into the next school year. We know it's a place we need to invest space, but we have to look at what impact it's having on the data and how we might need to restructure it. Claudia.
Yeah, the teachers participating in that state-supported letters training, is that during their workday, they're able to do that?
Nope, they are volunteering to do it outside of their workday.
So is there a way to get the state to provide that during their workday with money for subs?
It is equivalent to like 2 grad courses. So it's over 120 hours of professional learning that they do over a 2-year period, which would not, we want kids in classrooms with students for those number of hours, but we have very committed staff members who are participating in cohorts. We have special ed, gen ed, EL teachers who are participating in that training, and we're going to work to incentivize more staff members connecting to that professional development. As we look at mathematics, and we're having some more deeper, not more deeper, we're having more and more conversations about both literacy and mathematics, but we do see some specific urgency in mathematics relative to this data. So just like we're going to look at the literacy support model at middle school, we're collecting data and looking at the math support model with our additional staff that we've allocated there.
Can you explain what that means?
So we have added to Power, East, and Warner 1 additional FTE in ELA, 1 additional FTE in math for them to do pull-out support and push into support for students that need additional Tier 2 or Tier 3 math or literacy support.
What is FTE?
FTE is
Full-time.
equivalency. It's
They're full-time.
full-time staff.
So you have staff that are just support staff that work with individual students?
They're teachers.
They're teachers
Okay.
that support small group instruction as well as push into the classroom. The model shifts a little bit by building to building as we investigate and explore how we think this model will best support kids.
So those are district employees, they're not
Yep.
these high-dosage tutoring?
Nope, these are FEA members. That high dosage tutoring is a supplement to the work we do during the day, and that occurs outside of the school day. So the other piece we're looking at is at our grades 3 through 5 in mathematics, we're actually looking for additional teacher support staff that actually will coordinate and support our math students in grades 3 through 5 in the district. We have to leverage some additional support personnel for them. So we're looking at what that model is going to look like in the coming school year. We also have an increased focus and coming up with a strategic professional learning plan for grades 3 through 6 around number sense routines and games that develop greater fluency in numbers and operations, because our data tells us what kind of strands students are struggling with. We're expanding math recovery training to grades 3 through 8. Math recovery training is really an intensive professional learning around understanding mathematics and strategies to support moving students in mathematics. And it provides some assessments to do with students to identify where their concerns are. So we've had, for a number of years, we've invested in math recovery, and we've just been ballooning that this year into the next couple of years so that all staff have access to that training. 5th grade does tend to be an outlying. We knew this at the beginning of the school year. 5th grade is a little bit of an outlier with math performance. And so Colleen Stam, one of our math science coordinator, is actually meeting with each 5th grade PLC and having conversations about what do we think is happening in mathematics, specifically in 5th grade. So we go down to the grade level, and then we also talk at the system level, try to figure out what is happening. We're also revisiting our core instructional resource, instructional fidelity. Everyday Math was adopted just prior to the pandemic. And so using a new resource during the pandemic and then coming back full in person, we think we need to do some tweaking on providing staff with making sure that they're using those resources to fidelity, just because they didn't have the support time during the pandemic. So these are some of the pieces that we're doing to help respond to this data, with a lot more conversations to be had, because we want to look at our performance gaps, see where our practice gaps are, and find out where our opportunity gaps are so we can restructure and support best practice in the classroom.
Going back to the previous slide, all of these steps are basically at the K through 8 or 5 level, if you will. what are your thoughts, projections about how that's going to begin to address those numbers that we saw a little earlier? I may have been out.
So
I apologize.
one of the biggest pieces we can do to move the largest number of kids is to support Tier 1 instruction. And so the plans coming into this year, the plans extending into this year, into next year, we're still wanting to ensure we put a lot of support into that Tier 1 instruction, which is where every student receives instruction. So we reduce the number of students going to Tier 2 or Tier 3 in terms of needing additional support to operate it, to perform at grade level. And so we're doing a lot to support our teachers in the classroom with system support so they can do that. But then we're wrapping around them with these additional support positions like the elementary intervention coordinator, adding our ELA and math support at the middle school, adding some math support, FTE math support at grades 3 through 5. And so, and we also want to remember that our director, Chris O'Brien, is working on our MTSS processes and procedures to ensure that we are supporting kids when we notice they have needs. So there's a lot of system work as well as classroom level work that's happening. I hope that helps to answer your question. I know it feels like generalities. There's a lot of specifics and nuts and bolts I could always talk about, and I'm always long-winded, so people might not be happy if I continue on those pieces.
No, I'm just doing the math here. Our 5th and 6th graders were our 3rd and 4th graders during the pandemic. And so those are the kids that had the remote instruction for a lot of their school year. So have you done anything additional to remediate the things that maybe they didn't really get in 3rd and 4th grade that, I mean, are you seeing that maybe there's things that they missed in 3rd and 4th grade that is impacting how they're doing in 5th and 6th grade?
So in our conversations with our teachers, we're seeing numbers and operations. So fluency with math facts, fluency with division, addition, subtraction, single digit, multi-digit. And so what we're doing is that's why we're providing the additional supplemental tools such as Cuisinart rods or 10 frames and doing professional development around number sense, because those are the areas where students are struggling, and that's why they're struggling to access some of the grade level content with multi-step higher level problems. And so we've been doing professional development so that our staff can start using those strategies to build those fluency skills so they can better access the grade level multi-step problems. And so we are trying to, through Tier 1 professional development, Tier 1 instructional resources, make sure that students have access to grade level content in the classroom.
And do they have enough time in their instructional day to do all that stuff plus the stuff they're supposed to be doing? And how's that working out?
So I think we continue to work through that. And sometimes what we forget is how we can layer instruction. So literacy can happen inside of science and social studies. Mathematics can happen inside of science. And also just when we talk about structure is how does a teacher structure their day? And where is the time lost? Where is the time gained? How are they overlapping? Those are things teachers are continuing to have to massage as they continue to support our students at the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 level.
So I just want to circle back, and this is not a gotcha type of question. Are we looking at these steps in that Tier 1 emphasis, I'll use that term, during these grades? Let me ask it this way. That Tier 1 emphasis, is that also taking place on the secondary level? And I'm trying to repeat back what you said to make sure I have it clear. In addition to that happening for our secondary level where those numbers weren't trending as well, we're still putting in those wraparound services. We're looking at that Tier 2 piece, the Tier 3, and those supportive measures that Mr. O'Brien is working with to try and work those numbers from the back end and bring them up while you're coming at it from the front.
So these are additional things we're doing beyond the initial pieces that I talked about at the beginning of each section that included Tier 1 and Tier 2/Tier 3 work. So we're always working at all levels. But when you are looking for learning leaps for kids in response to the pandemic, We really have to make sure that our teachers have the capacity to meet the needs of a continuum of learner in part of Tier 1, in addition to that 2 and 3. If we rely on 2 and 3 only, then we aren't going to capture enough kids. So we're trying to look at it at all levels. So I hope that helps answer your question.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Good. Just to share a couple final thoughts. So first of all, thank you for putting this comprehensive report together. This is now, excuse me, the third time that the group of you have presented to this Board of Education. So last year, you came to a retreat with an effort of data literacy and education to explain NWEA, to explain projected growth versus growth met. And then this fall, you gave another presentation. Now this is your progress report. So the more that we kind of get out of the pandemic and we get more to a baseline of NWEA and we look at these interventions and we can try to draw some correlation to the things that we're doing and how it might be moving the needle. One of the things I really want to thank Mrs. Hendrickson for including in this and Mrs. Suarez is the conditional growth percentile chart. Because we have heard from community members about a different way to look at NWEA. We have heard from public comment, people who have looked at our data or looked at reports that get published in the newspaper, and they draw some conclusions, if not opinions, about our achievement or our success. And so we're always willing to listen and receive that information. That has been incorporated into this report. And so not only looking at our traditional projected MET report, but looking at the conditional growth percentile ranks, and I think you did a great job of explaining it's the extent to which the growth size relative to a certain grade level or a demographic area. And so we knew about that metric before. You can see we've taken a lot of time this evening because it's very involved and there's a lot of data. To Ms. Fox's point, our teachers have that deep data that you're referencing, and I hear that you'd like to see a little bit more of that. We might be able to bring that back to the retreat or a future presentation. But our teachers understand that at the classroom level, not only for remediation, but for differentiation for students who are well outperforming and need that higher level of differentiation. And so you can see all of the things that we're trying to do. There's tremendous urgency. And I commend you for putting this all together in really a user-friendly way to help continue to educate the board and the public, as well as to help us remind ourselves that all of our students are learning every day. All of our students are growing. We know that we want accelerated growth. We need some targeted interventions. We've explained the targeted interventions that we're using, and we know that we're going to get there as an organization. We knew it took a long time to get to where we are. We know we're coming out of a pandemic, and it's going to take us some time to really get to where we want to be. But we're on the right path, and I just appreciate you continuing to present to this board and to the community.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to what Dr. Delgado said, the required part of this presentation is, did our kids meet or exceed their growth? And we want to make sure you know that we are sharing the additional things that we are looking at the level, at the district level and at the building level. I do want to say on the math conversation, because we are meeting right now, I guess I'll step back and say, Claudia, to your question was, how are they going to do all of this? They can't. That's this is not about asking everybody to do more in their individual classrooms. It's how do we bring the brilliance of our staff together to solve this problem. So just so the board knows, we are bringing together, we have once and we have 2 more times scheduled with our middle school math teachers to say, what is that ideal learning experience you want to provide? They know what it is. We're just going to help them try to figure out how to do this together. Because we have students, as you can see, who need this support now. But we also need to make sure that we're catching kids before 4th grade and 7th grade, which are 2 key grade levels for math specifically. So I want you to know that we value our educators, we value their expertise, and we are bringing them together and helping them talk through different ways we can structure so that we can definitely meet the needs of our kids. So that's happening right now.
I appreciate the urgency that you've mentioned multiple times as you've presented this evening. This is a process that we began multiple years prior to now, even during COVID, and we continue to address this head-on with more and more different types of targeted interventions at the classroom level, systems level, and everything in between, with ideas for teaching and learning that are based on the science of learning in both reading and math literacy. And we can see, I know the correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but the kinds of interventions that we have already put in place with foundational skills seem to be having an impact, and that I'm very excited about the fact that we have plans for next year to roll out the new foundational skills curriculum in all of our elementaries. So we're on the job. We're doing the work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Board of Education and Dr. Delgado.
Yes.
Thank you. And we do have one more district update. And we are very, very excited to welcome to the podium our wonderful K-12 Career and Innovation Coordinator, Ms. Nyasha Boyd.
I was going to introduce her, but Dr. Delgado did.
I'm sorry.
You're all good. No, that's okay. You're all good. I'll let you take the
No problem. I just want to say good evening to the board and to the community that's in the room and also watching, as it is the evening, and I am wrapping up the district updates. I just wanted to take some time to share with you all the vision and the framework and the teams that we've put in place to support career and future readiness for our students. And I'm just going to provide a little bit of a snapshot in the time that I've been provided. And I'm going to make sure I'm using the clicker. Nope. Let me go back. And so I'm really excited because career readiness is not only what I do in the district, but something that I'm very passionate about. And this first visual that you see is really a little bit of a brainchild that we've been kind of working on. And I just wanted to kind of go through it a little bit. The K-5, 6-8, and 9-12 career development model is kind of a new idea. Career readiness has historically been something that's been conceived as a 6-8, 9-12. That's kind of the readiness, and when we're talking about this. So over the last year or so, the state and the county have really opened up this idea for career readiness to also fit within the K-5 grade band. And so I put together this little visual to kind of help to make the idea of the development model a little bit more visual so that the board and also families in the community can understand. And I'm going to show you tonight some of the resources that we're using for this. But if you notice, as you follow the lines down, K-5, we're really working on self-awareness and exploration. Exploration specifically in 3-5, and I'll show you how we're using resources to do that. In 6-8, the self-awareness and exploration is on a continuum, so it continues, but it's specifically kind of like skill-based and developmentally based on the ages and the needs of those students. Under that, you'll see a new color called interests, talents, and experiences, and I've been before the board before talking about some of those experiences like the STEM My Truck and mock interviews and things of that sort, but I'm trying to help make visual how this development model actually gets carried out. And then also for our 6-8 students, a lot of them are making some decisions in terms of what they're interested in based on the interests, skills, and talents that we are finding out about them and making more aware to them. And there's simple decisions, like I had a student say, well, because I know I want to go into this, I'm thinking about taking my health class over the summer, so it opens up space for me to take my intro to technology class in the fall. And so that's where some of our middle schoolers are starting to make what I consider these small step decisions to open up opportunity for them to really explore more what's possible and the resources that we have in our district. Under the 9-12 model, again, self-awareness and exploration continues. Interests, talents, and experiences adjust for that grade band. Decisions are always happening in terms of course selection, from the clubs and activities that our students decide to participate in that help them to walk closer within their lane of career readiness. We also see students taking actions that are not only post-secondary, but also secondary. This could be a student that decides that I'm going to decide to take a CTE class, for example, and do a credit exchange for maybe a math class or a science class. They're still having these opportunities to make decisions and take action based on what their interests are and the course and plan that they have that's uniquely theirs as students. In this next slide, I wanted to introduce one of the resources that we're using. Many of you are familiar with Zello, that was career cruising many years ago. Some things that I want to point out to you that, of course, because the management system is across K-12, there was a lot of thought that went into how we would roll this out because K-5 teachers and also in that area had not really thought about using a resource on a more regular basis. So as we move through the presentation, I'll show you some of the strategy and strategic placement that we've put in place to make sure our students are successful at that grade band. But I want to bring up to you on the side where it talks about like the parent portal and demo accounts. We have opportunities for parents to walk alongside of their students and also to create their own demo accounts so that if parents are thinking about maybe to making a change in their own career path or introducing their students to other types of options in terms of post-secondary education, they can do that and have some really interesting conversations. This is an area that we like to see grow as parents become more interested in walking alongside of their children in their career path. I also want to highlight that there's this idea of soft skills or power skills above compliance, and we're really pushing for young people to be independent in their use of Zello. Zello is found as a link under the FPS bookmarks tab, so any student that has a Chromebook has the opportunity to participate in their Zello usage, whether they're in class or outside of class. And so we find that this is a great resource that gives parents and families opportunities for exploration, the ability to think about options going forward, and then it also gives them opportunity to work alongside their students as part of our career readiness team, which sometimes gets overlooked. In the next slide, I wanted to just shout out some of my team. I'm really excited and wish they could be here tonight, but they send their regards and they're working really hard with the students that they do serve. So one of the structures that was strategic, especially in the K-5 model, was to raise up elementary teacher leaders, or what I call POCs. It's no way that I can clone myself and be in all of the buildings at one time. And so the idea was to find and nominate teachers that could facilitate the launching of the Zello program in their buildings. These teachers have received additional training, and they collaborate with their staff in ways to use this resource, along with lessons and extensions to raise career readiness in their buildings. They better know the kind of structures and the culture of their classes and their schools better than I do. And so they're able to tailor things specific to the pursuits that we're trying to reach at the K2 and 3-5 grade level. So special shout out to all of these teachers. I won't name them all. They do know who they are, and I really appreciate all the hard work and dedication that they are putting together. And I've been with most of these teachers for the past 2 years. This one's a little foggy, I do apologize, but this is our above compliance EDP team. This is our 6, 8, and 9, 12 teachers, and also those who work in the trenches with our middle school and high school students. So I want to just shout out those teachers and highlight a couple of things. In our second CDF, Ms. Badrack has been able to make sure this year that we're over 90% completion of EDPs across all of our 4 middle schools, and we've been strategic in our process for doing that. We've added lunch and learns, which you'll see a couple pictures of, where students actually get to meet during their lunchtime around areas that they're interested in and learn more in the career space during that time. And then we also are able to say that we're taking 20 students that are part of our middle school HOSA team to states this year. And so we're really excited about opportunities that we're giving our students to really start to think about what's possible for them even before they have to get to decision and way before they have to get into high school and post-secondary work. We decided this year to try to create a cadence where our middle schools and high schools completed compliance before December. And then we were able to live above compliance in the spring. And so we have students who are completing all of their power skill or soft skill lessons already, and they have completed all of their Zello requirements that were given to us by Oakland schools and also by the state. For those who have never seen Zello, I have a few slides so that you can see that. The K2 model looks a little bit like a cross between Paw Patrol meets Doc McStuffins. Students are, for those of us who live in that space and have young children, you know exactly why we're laughing. But kids are excited. They get to click on Career Town and go through all of these different buildings that represent careers in the future. They're able to see themselves in these careers and also push against some of the stereotypes of who gets to do what and when. And so we're really excited that every time that they do go into their Zello profiles, it asks them a question that specifically tries to get to know them as a student. They earn badges, and it's a lot of fun. Most teachers are giving students about maybe 10 to 20 minutes a week to do this investigation, but again, this can live outside of the classroom. As Zello gets a little bit more robust in the 3-5s, it looks a little bit more, a little different. It becomes less gamey and more into the ideas of them as individuals, looking at those careers and all about me. I just wanted to show this to you so you'd have a frame of reference for how it changes through the grade bands. This is an 8th grade profile. It would say, hello, Nyasha, let's begin your EDP. And so again, it's really interactive and it is engaging with our students. And so we're finding that a lot of them are able to go in and do the soft skill lessons that you see underneath the blue box, and they are growing and learning. At the top, you'll see an area called Explore and Plans. So students are able to go in and tour college campuses. They're able to go in and make some plans about their futures and things that they're thinking about. The new area is portfolios. Students are able to take the research and projects that they're doing and create portfolios around their career plans, which I think is really exciting, and a lot more students are using that. You'll also see the links and resources. We're constantly connecting them to future thought around trades, around school, college, and using their dashboard to navigate their course selections, their classes, and et cetera. And then at 12th grade, again, similar look, but you'll notice there are even more links and resources as we start to have them look at registered apprenticeships, as we start to give them outlooks for future career aspirations. And you'll notice that their lessons are about job interviews, what are your career path choices, and what is your career backup plan. This is a snapshot about a week ago of what our Zello profiles look across our district. And I'm really excited about the progress that our students are making. And I do want to explain some of what you might see. Immediately, people always look at the smaller bars. And honestly, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, along with our kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade students, have a longer cadence to complete their Zello. And so there's a big push in our district for our middle school students to be done by December. We also connect our activities like the STEMI truck to their completion of their EDPs. And so you'll notice that our middle schools and our high schools are at or above the compliance deadline. And we are working to get our elementaries there. Their goal is by May, June, to have the same rankings of completion as our middle school and high school students. And so I'm really excited about the progress that we're making at this point in the school year, because with this being our 2nd year, having Zello be a requirement, K-5, we have 2 buildings that are already at 95% completion. And again, this is all of our buildings, so it's aggregated data across all 5 grades. But you'll be really happy to see that our administration and our POC leadership has really taken this on. Another resource I want to show you is our Pathful Connect resource, and this is actually bringing our industry experts into the classroom. This is available to all of our 6th through 12th grade teachers and students And I will reiterate, yes, I said students. Students have the opportunity on their Chromebooks to go into Pathful and actually engage with some of these wonderful conversations with industry-level experts. This is not being used at the level I'd like to see yet, but that's why I use these opportunities to communicate this information so parents, the board, also know, and we can continue to encourage our students to independently pursue intentionally their thoughts around their futures and their careers. In honor of CTE month, I included some topics that were covered last month about video game designing, criminal investigator, how to become a real estate agent, what is it like to work on a cruise ship, and students are able to actually go in and see and listen to videos that are pre-recorded with people giving them information. This is what the profile actually looks like when you log in. So if a parent is watching right now and they went into Pathful Connect, they would see the dashboard on the side. And these are examples of some of the activities that you can either add to a playlist to watch at a later date or view at the time that they're either being given or right now if it's active and live. All of these people and all of these opportunities have been vetted through the Pathful system, and so our students are hearing from industry-level experts from all over the country and sometimes from different parts of the world. So you may wonder why I'm here. Students ask why do I need to learn this? Why do I need to tie my shoes? Why do I have to walk on the side of the hallway? Why? And so I'm really hoping in this next phase of what I'm doing and leading this initiative is that we really start to connect the why students have within their core content areas. And so that career readiness doesn't exist as an event on the side or an extra added thing to do, but that there's some kind of a collaboration and marriage between what I'm learning in the classroom and how that connects to my future readiness. And I feel like that helps us with our portrait of a graduate and the things that we're trying to do as a promise to all of our students in Farmington Public Schools. And so I wish that I could put my arm around one of the teachers I'm getting ready to highlight, but her name is Cassandra McMillan, and I actually met her because her class was suggested and nominated to go to a wonderful STEM activity at Lawrence University. Now, she's a kindergarten teacher at Lanigan, and so many people were like, a kindergarten teacher going to Lawrence Tech? Like, are you sure? And I said, I think this is a good fit. They were looking to not only give our K-3 students an opportunity to see a college campus, but they were able to also make activities specific for them. And so when I came to our classroom to get the post-field trip experience, I was amazed not only by how well they were on the trip, being the youngest students in the group from Oakland County, but a lot of what I had envisioned in my mind about that merger and connection was happening all around me with all of her students. And so she would be here to tell you a little bit more, but I'm going to try to do justice and say, Cassandra, I really appreciate all the hard work, and I'm going to share this with the board at this time. But notice how in her math connection, she's actually listed the career connection and the learning target. She's actually put in not only the standards, but if her students are learning about paleontology, she's lifting up the language of career and giving her students an opportunity to do that. In her informational writing unit, the main topic were to retell details about being a paleontologist. And I was like, this is amazing. I'll show you another slide. So her students actually got a chance to dig and carve out and find dinosaurs as if they were paleontologists. And so again, kindergarten, connected within their content area, but also connected to career. And this is the area and the shift that I'm hoping will allow for some of the things that we want to see for our students. Also, a lot of our teachers are already doing the work to create these wonderful lesson plans. Adding that learning target and connecting it to careers is just one more way to identify not only within their plan, but also with their students, that we are preparing you for the dream or the vision that you have for yourself. And this is one of my favorite pictures because I actually got to see this in person. But this is a social studies connection where how do I get what I want and need? And so if you could think about having 6- and 7-year-old girls around the table combing hair and talking all things braids and twists and all of that, they're having to negotiate who gets to get the brush, how do I show you how to part something, do you want to listen to me? And so we're able to talk about cosmetology, salon ownership, and spa ownership and we're 6-year-olds or we're 5-year-olds, and this was just amazing to me. And so again, we have some wonderful, talented teachers in our district, and again, I'm trying to marry core content with career and readiness for our students, and these are just examples. So here's the field trip. You can see the kids actually got to tour Lawrence Technical University and got to see it from their little bodies. And it was a great tool to give them a sense of a college campus environment and experience. And many of us were not walking college campuses in our kindergarten year. This is an example of the post activity that I picked up. Imagine that they could show themselves at 1 year old in their cribs, show themselves right now at 5 years old, and then show themselves at 25 and 26 over the top with scientist and doctor. And again, we just need kids to be thinking about themselves and seeing themselves in the examples and activities that they're being provided. And I thought this was cute just to bring before the board and the community. So you can see that our students are really trying to see themselves in some of the activities and opportunities that they've been given. Okay, so I'll get to some highlights. Last time I was here, we were talking about the STEMI truck. And so in the center with the young man with his mouth wide open, he is super excited, was a STEMI truck experience. And so the STEMI truck was here on the campus of East Middle School. It serviced East Middle School and FSA. And we're super excited that about 700 students got a chance to have an experience using the STEM truck. We also, for the first time, did a work-based learning opportunity with some of our CTE high schoolers who came on and walked our students through this process. So that's something you're familiar with. To your left is something you may not be as familiar with. We did what we call confetti pops this year. So our students who were able to meet their EDP expectation and exceed it were all invited to a little party. And we had a confetti pop, gave them little certificates. And as we moved from school to school, the number increased. We started with 60, and by the time we got to our last school, we were at 120 students who were above compliance just by giving them a little incentive. And it was really cool. So this is Mr. LaCroix and Ms. Moss at East Middle School. The bottom picture to the left is a recent event, which is our 8th grade tours, where we took about 700 8th graders to our high schools for them to get a chance to see CTE classes and electives. You'll also see them in the school store. The highlight was the cookies, but also meeting students who were branch managers and learning about the process of being a part of CTE and also thinking about making decisions for their futures. And in the middle, you'll see us working with some of our hosts of middle school students at Farmington STEAM Academy. And then this last picture, I love to always show the young people because this is why we're here and this is why we do what we do. You'll notice that this was the CTE tours. Kids got a lot of swag, and they were super excited to be walking around with bags representing all 11 of our programs. You'll even notice that a new teacher who used to teach 5th grade is now teaching 8th grade, decided to get up on the gurney and give us a little bit of a tour. And so the kids were excited. I was really excited to see young people leading young people in a conversation about their futures. And so that's a highlight. And then lastly, I'll just leave you with a couple of things. We are happy to be rolling out 8th grade mock interviews. We do have dates in May, so if we have any community members and board members that are interested in participating with that, I'll be happy to let you know that we are doing those throughout the month of May, with East being first on May 2nd. FSA is on the 16th, Warner's on the 25th, and Powers on the 31st. We will be giving out official invitations to our board members, of course, but if there are any parents that are interested, we do have a website, mockinterviews@gmail.com, and it is connected to our FPS teachers, and we'll be able to respond to people who are interested in supporting a few buildings or all buildings. We will be doing both in-person and virtual interviews on those dates. We have a Wayne State STEM tour that's going to be given 7th and 8th graders at Warner an opportunity to tour Wayne State's campus. That's coming up in April. We've got some community partnerships coming up with work where we're going to be doing some more job shadowing and opportunities for students to learn a little bit more about the employment opportunities within a cluster. And then lastly, we're doing a See Yourself with TV10 and some of our 5th grade students, allowing them to hear a little bit more about what production looks like as they do announcements in the mornings every day, to see some of our TV10 students who helped to run this wonderful event today, and then help them to see forward a place for themselves even before they ever step into middle school or high school. So I thank you so much for this opportunity to share a little snapshot of career readiness. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them at this time.
I like the pictures of them from the past to the present to 26.
Oh, yeah.
They are still the same size
They
from.
are still the same
No one
size.
gained weight.
Yeah, a little bit more hair curl I saw in one, but
But
yes.
I also enjoyed to see the children engaging in hands-on doing the, the little doll heads and stuff. So I appreciate this because this is all hands-on experience.
Yes.
And you're starting at a young age. Lanigan has some amazing students.
They do.
And they are going way and beyond. I'm not just speaking for Lanigan, but that's all the students. But that seemed to be a great program, and it seemed to be fun, and they don't even realize that they're learning.
Yes.
That's the good thing and the beauty.
And this is one teacher in her classroom. Imagine if we were seeing this replicated, and it is being done by teachers, but just with a little bit more emphasis on careers and future readiness. And I think
And
we're
thank
almost
you.
there.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker?
Hi.
I am so impressed, especially going back to that first or second slide
I can
that
try to
showed
go
the
back.
K through 12 career development model.
The first slide. Sorry, if this bothers anyone.
The
Yeah.
ecosystem, if you will, that you're developing centered around this level of training and awareness, moving the kids from K all the way through 12 with this, and then adding in Lawrence Tech as a college partner to begin to bring that element in as well. It is something that more districts need to be doing, quite frankly. So I'm just want to congratulate you and the entire team.
Yes.
Especially the one kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, Miss.
That
yes.
was
Miss
a
Bagnell.
fabulous application there as well. So this is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I'm remiss not to mention Helen Kiefer, who helps with the CTE part. There's like a lot of people that help to make this happen. I just happen to be the voice to bring this information to you. So we are working really hard as a team to make these opportunities available at the different grade bands.
Mr. Rich?
First, I wanted to thank you for this presentation. I liked not only just the flow of it, but kind of building on how are we going about this with our students. So going through a career development model, talking about how it's different for each of our different grade levels, how are we building continually, talking about power skills, teamwork, being able to work with each other and problem solve, collaborate, and communicate, which was a great thing I saw when you're looking at your power skills as additional things for each of these different modules. And understand, again, with the graphs, because people are looking at that and saying, well, why are those numbers
Oh, yeah, that one.
smaller? If one student at a higher grade level is able to do something, sit down and spend an hour on something, and another student can spend maybe 5 minutes, because I'm not sure how many of you have been dealing with any kindergartners lately, trying to keep that attention span on something and just trying to get progress. It does take some time, and just how those different modules are done, as you brought up, it's just how it is, but it's so great seeing the progress that our students are making and talking about these things outside of just, oh, you're in 12th grade, what are you going to do?
Yes.
So-
Oh, shoot, I just found out about something, but it's too late because you
Right.
needed to have been a 10th grader to start. Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing, is talking about, it's a continuing to build this as students are growing and learning more, and not kind of hitting them with something at the end. You see a lot more students taking CTE courses and thinking about that as a career and looking into the trades or any kind of other career paths outside of continuing on to a college or university. And having this kind of effort in our district is so important in that, and showing that there are other pathways and other options. So thank you again for this presentation.
Thank you.
It's really phenomenally exciting. And, it was just last year that we finalized our profile of a lifelong learner for our district. And our fifth, just happens to be listed fifth on our profile, is the self-actualizer. FPS learners are in control of their educational pathway and their future. Learners set and strive toward goals based on self-awareness of strengths, interests, talents, and opportunities for growth. Using a growth mindset, they demonstrate self-compassion and self-acceptance as they become lifelong learners. So when we crafted this, this was a stretch. This was our vision, and you are making it happen already. It hasn't even been a year yet since we, created this profile, and I'm so excited about what's already happening from kindergarten all the way through, giving the 8th graders the opportunity to see all the different options that are available through our CTE program so that they know what, options exist. And I remember when my kids were little, they wanted to be either a policeman or a garbage man. Those were like the two, when they were like little, like 2 and 4, they were like, this is what they, what they were familiar with. They thought those were the options.
Yeah.
So it's so phenomenal that at such young ages we're giving our students this kind of exposure and giving them opportunities to explore, what am I interested in? And how do my interests align with the different career options that are available? And what am I good at? So thank you so much to you and your whole team and all of the staff throughout our district who are making this a reality for our students.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And this is great timing because a lot of parents are having to make this choice in the next few days about courses and what their children will do. 5th grade, transition to middle school, 8th graders into high school. So it's timely that we're trying to make sure that kids are exposed at a point when they can make decisions, and it's really, really good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Just one final comment from me as we wrap up our district updates. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. I was just going to say how impressed I am. K through 12th grade, career exploration and what have you. I see the way that this has been put together. I see this as being very innovative.
Thank you.
Those are the kinds of things we'd like to see. Thank you.
Just wanted to share 3 final thoughts. So as someone who's worked in high schools and middle schools for almost 30 years and seen career exploration kind of come and go and seen a lot of compliance that we just kind of check a box and we do an EDP, this is so refreshing to see that this is very thoughtful, very purposeful, and very intentional in terms of authentic exposure to careers. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, Ms. Starron and I and Ms. Bauman and I have been going, and the board knows this, doing cookies and conversation, where we meet with students all around the district. So just last week, we met with 2 middle schools, and the middle school students were touting the 8th grade visit and the CTE exposure and the elective exposure, and they were really talking to us about thinking about careers and thinking about pathways because of that visit that you set up. So that's the second thing. And the third thing today, actually earlier today, Ms. Starron and I were at North Farmington High School with another cookies and conversation with high school students, and the very topic of CTE type field trips and experiences came up, not just for students who are taking CTE courses, but for all students in high school, that they are asking. One of the questions I posed to them is, if you could think of the best field trip or what could we enhance your high school experience, they thought that more exposure to careers, to actually going to industry and talking with people who are doing the jobs, whether you take a CTE course or not, that could enhance their experience and help them develop their pathway for post-secondary options. So just kudos to you for your leadership in this role. It's really, really important. And our kids are telling us, they're literally telling us that this is important to them. So thank you for making it purposeful,
No problem.
you and your team.
There's a 9th grade orientation for anyone who wants to come. It's at North Farmington on Thursday. I'll be there, so I hope that other people will be there too. Thank you all so much.
And those are the end of our district updates. Thank you for giving us the time.
Right. Next, reports from board committees. I'll report as the chair of the legislative committee. I alluded to this earlier during my announcements. Our legislative committee had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Cheryl Kennedy, who is the Michigan Department of Education liaison, legislative liaison with the Michigan Department of Education and our state legislators. And one of the pieces of information that Mr. Walker, Dr. Delgado, and Mr. Rich and I learned from her in that conversation a few months back is that as a board, while we don't have the authority to change the Michigan merit curriculum requirements for graduation, we do have a significant amount of latitude to determine how our students satisfy those requirements. And so with that in mind and the profile in mind and some of the other initiatives that we have in mind for our students toward helping them chart their futures and succeed in both career and life, we are later this month at our next legislative committee meeting going to begin to look at our current set of Farmington Public Schools graduation requirements and see where we might be able to build in some space, some latitude for new creative options in terms of how we enable students to satisfy their Michigan merit curriculum requirements. So we will be coming back to the full board with our thoughts and ideas around that to get your input, but we're going to go ahead and begin that work later this This is a really exciting time to be in this district. I know that Dr. Delgado and I are presenting at a conference in Orlando later in April. Dr. Coffin and Mrs. Hendrickson are going to a conference to share all the different kinds of things that we are doing here in Farmington to look for new and different ways to meet the learning needs of our students, to share what we're doing and also to connect with others who can help us begin to create the new models for K-12 teaching and learning that will help us get there. Very exciting. And now we move to public comment. I would like to point out that while each community member who wishes to speak for public comment is limited to 3 minutes, we are happy to meet with you outside of the board meeting, and Dr. Delgado, myself, and our fellow board members are always happy to meet for additional discussion of any topic of concern for our community members. So while we are limited to the 3 minutes for public comment, we are available for many more lengthy conversations. We'll approach you after the board meeting and can set up a time to meet. So we have done that in the past, and we will continue to make ourselves available for that. Okay, Mr. Bill Lubaway.
Good evening. I'm going to vary from my script that I sent out, or just handed out, which is be all that you can be. And there are really two sections. One is, this is the problem. And as I listened to all of the presentations tonight, the main problem I have with our district is communication. You don't speak to your community. You didn't tell your community that we were D-rated, and you didn't tell the community that, so what? All the other districts in Oakland County are on average D students or D ratings. That's bad. And that's because when people find it out, and I was shocked to find that out, and I think others would be too, why don't you just step forward and tell people what's going on, which is tonight, and I wouldn't tell them in an hour and a half, but we ought to be able to present where we are and what we're doing to our community, honestly. The fix, I'm going to convert this to accountant's terms. You have a budget, you figure out what your bottom line is going to be, and you work towards that. One of the things that you don't do is have a budget for your education. And that's crazy. That's your business, that's your bottom line. And what you're going to do as you go through this restructuring of the education system here is you're going to reallocate resources, more resources, not an infinite amount of resources, fewer resources in other areas. That's what that means. And just as important, you have to have a time frame. And so you can do all of these things. I'm not going to be happy if you get these done after my 2 kids in the school district graduate. I would just as soon know what's going to happen, when, and I want to see that promulgated right now. This is time to do it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. David Villar?
Hello. I wanted to get 3 things cleared up, and I wanted to thank you guys for providing more insight on the literacy and numeracy goal aspect of what's going on. So there are some parent surveys that I was hoping the district would get involved in obtaining to address some of the achievement gap concerns, and I think we need to emphasize that more because we're not going to be able to address those concerns adequately no matter what we do without more parent input. And if you've done so and I'm unaware, I apologize for not finding it on the website or not being aligned with what has happened. But that needs to be done. We need to see from those metrics parent input and how on the lower achievement levels, what kind of feedback we can get from parents that could provide some insight. I'm hoping that you guys could offer the FTE, I guess that's the full-time educator, FTE, for summer, if possible, if that's an option for some of the math-related services. And I'm aware, from my experience, that we're using the University of Chicago math, I guess the Common Core structure from the University of Chicago, I guess their developed Common Core structure. So following that is helpful, and what I'm thinking is that when we have the tutoring or the other math-related extra services, that we can align the students by grade with progress from those Common Core services. So I think we're on Unit 5 for the 3rd grade right now. So the tutoring would be more efficient for 3rd grade students for Unit 5. So if the tutors are, kept abreast of that, that would help. But the logical strategies and the self-awareness are important, and I think those would be considered like softer elements of learning, but they are more important to help the kids with self-esteem issues or with focusing and things like that. And I do think you guys are doing a good job of communication. It's just a lot of information. We don't want to oversimplify our priorities without input from the parents, and we certainly do not want to talk about reallocating and changing the structure of this whole situation as if we're just doing project management without having more compassionate understanding of what the student and parent needs are in this district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Eugene Greenstein.
depart from my planned script. Two meetings ago, we learned about phonics, and we saw 10 or so teachers beaming with excitement about applying phonics and how great a difference it would make. Following meeting, we heard it's going to take another year to fix 3 through 6. That's unacceptable, totally unacceptable. And then we've got 8 through 12, or 7 through 12. What's the remediation going to be for that? Hey, these are difficult issues. I recognize that. But we need to have plans that are public, that are clear, and the objectives of the board shouldn't be to learn how to read the metrics. The objectives of the board that are passed down should be, we want to be in the top 10% of all schools in Michigan. We were there once. And the target isn't being better than 50%. It's a high target. Whether we can meet it instantly, that's irrelevant. But the targets need to be set high, and national targets don't mean much because nationally, we and the state are all down on the ground somewhere compared to where we used to be. So let's set the standards high. Let's have metrics that are measurable, that can flow down to the superintendent and down to the teachers, that they can strive for. You guys need to do your homework on your time to learn how to read the metrics and what they mean. Just like I spent 6 months learning what reading was all about. And I'm not even paid to do this or have responsibility to do it. But we need clearer metrics, we need containment plans, and we need to talk about those things because our kids need to graduate. And I must be less than 3 minutes because I haven't seen the clock go up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening. I couldn't let the public comment period pass without remembering Monday, February 13th, which was 22 days ago, when many of us who were Farmington parents and are now Spartan parents received texts on our phone, as did our students, saying, run, hide, fight. There was an active shooter at Michigan State who ultimately killed 3 students and injured 5 others. Many of the students who lived through that also had attended Oxford High School and were wearing Oxford Strong shirts at the time. I'm proud to say that you'd be very proud of your Farmington Public School alumni who did what they were instructed to do, who reached out to their friends, their peers. Some of them barricaded doors or sought out other students so they weren't sitting in their rooms alone. And many of those students had attended on March 14th of 2018 a demonstration and a teach-in. They left their high schools and they went to a local church. They even brought back Mr. Jones, who probably outshone Congresswoman Lawrence for the reception he received. But my point is, this isn't just about the math, the numbers. You need to be focused on equipping these children to do something when they get out in the world, and so they can prevent the kids coming behind them from being in the situations they're in. Within 24 hours, students went to the Capitol and spoke to legislators. 48 hours after that, they went back to the Capitol, and on March 15th, there's another rally at the Capitol. I'm proud to say that our local Senator Rosemary Bear has sponsored a number of bills, and I would urge you to include that information on the website so people can educate themselves. we can't bring back these students who've died in our communities, but we can try to make their memories mean something and equip our students to be articulate and passionate and speak truth to power. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Is there any other public comment? Any other public comment? Seeing no further public comment is closed. Moving on to action items. We have three having to do with technology purchases. Dr. Bell? Yep, yes, go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education approve the award. Let me start over, I'm sorry. All of these items were presented in detail at a February 7th regular meeting, and so at this point, I will make a motion for each of these separately. And then if there's any further discussion or someone needs to refresh their memory, we can move forward at that time. I move that the Board of Education approve the award for the structured cabling bid in the amount of $66,458.67 using Complete Interactive Technologies, Inc., CIT, with funds to come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund as presented.
Point of clarification, can you read that number one more time?
$66,458.65.
Okay, thank you. I think I misheard it.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Weems, seconded by Ms. Heinrich. Is there any additional discussion? Yes?
Is there any way that we can have the structure cabling and wireless upgrade separate from the video surveillance? Due to the fact that I have spoken to other schools throughout Michigan, and the 30 days is not enough time on those surveillance cameras. 90 days is in most communities, school communities, and I also agree because after day 28 or 29, by that time our district is working on trying to find other information or may not have had it, or just like we just came off of a break. If students report something at day 28 and we are all down, then by day 29 or 30, that information is removed or taped over. I also still have that in my head where when it was presented, it was said that it's cheaper to use 30 days opposed to extra time. But we're talking about teachers, staff, students, and we're also talking about if we have a teacher or a principal that stays in the building later. I would not want anybody to go home and under trauma and not be able to report that. And then later on, 28 days later, we don't, or even the 30th day, not have that information. If we could, hopefully we have money in the budget to move up and move forward to have a more expensive technology.
Sorry, point of order. It is separate motions.
They are separate.
Okay,
So this is the
that is
discussion
fine.
on the first.
I appreciate that, Mr. Rich.
Yeah, I was going to mention that, except for the fact that this is for the internet infrastructure, which will support the security cameras. That's why I didn't interrupt, but there are three separate motions.
If they are three separate motions, I have no problem with that. But I don't want them to be, I would like to see something different, if that makes sense, more surveillance, if that makes sense.
So there's a separate motion for surveillance.
I understand that, Ms. Weems, but what I'm saying is we are discussing the technology purchases. So with that being said, I know they're all separate, but they will probably go hand in hand if that makes sense.
Not really. So what we're talking about right now is the infrastructure for internet for the new building. So if this is not passed, there will be no internet for the new building. That's separate and apart from the video surveillance cameras, which is the third motion.
Yeah, you just clarified that. This is from our discussion last week. It's for the Visions, which is the old Farmington Community School that they're renovating. So that needs to be put in place before the walls are put up.
Just to suggest, Mr. Prescott, our Director of Technology, is here, as is Mr. Barth. If there's any clarifications needed, they could easily step to the podium.
Is there any additional, do you need any additional clarification, Ms. Smith?
No, I'm good with it.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? Okay. Do we need to take a roll call vote?
Yes.
All right, that's what I thought. Mr. Walker?
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Myself am yes, and Dr. Blau,
Yes.
unanimous.
Okay, motion passes. Ms. Weems?
Yes, and so I will make another motion, and I will clarify that this is for a wireless system to support the delivery of speed and connection. I am moving to approve the award for the I move that the Board of Education approve the award for the wireless project for $1,046,787.86 using Inacompt Technical Services Group with funds to come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Mr. Rich. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, could we please have a roll call vote?
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Ms. Fox?
Yes.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Heinrich?
Yes.
Myself am yes, Dr. Blau,
Yes.
unanimous.
Okay, motion passes. Ms. Weems?
Yes, this next recommendation or motion is for the video surveillance. I move that the Board of Education approve the award for the video surveillance bid in the amount of $469,687.32 using Securitech with funds to come from the Capital Projects Building and Site 2020 Fund as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Weems, supported by Mr. Rich. Is there any discussion?
I would like to hear more about the discussion that Trustee Smith has brought to our attention today.
I have reached out to other districts. Those districts have 90-day surveillance camera footage. It's going to cost more, but it doesn't cover up in the 30-day period. So it won't be taped over. I really like what you presented, but at the end of the day, I would like to see more of if that makes sense.
It does. And so the way, all of the districts that we work with and all the districts and the vendors that we've consulted with, 30 days is standard. So we went out and we priced for 30 days. And that doesn't mean if there's an incident on day 10, we can pull that footage off and we can keep it forever, as long as we want. It just means that, if something were to happen and we need to go back to 31 days, is it guaranteed to be there? No. The servers were built with excess capacity, so could it still be there? Yes. But if let's say we go to 90 days, what happens if somebody doesn't report it until day 89 or 90? So it's a moving target. I'm happy to do, to go whichever direction we want. We just went with what was standard with the districts that we worked with and based on vendor recommendations.
So I've had conversations with the district I won't name the district, it's 2 hours away predominantly, well, approximately 2 hours away. They do a 90-day. And their question was, why would we do 30?
And I'm sure there's some that save it forever. The standard that we had operated on was the 30 days. So that was kind of where we got the pricing from and the way we proposed the project.
So how much more is it if we went with 90 days? Here's the thing, I'm not against doing this.
Right.
But I want more time.
And I can't give you that number right off the top of my head.
Because
I
we
don't
just had an incident in Michigan State. We have incidents all around in school districts. And at the end of the day, for example, say you have a child that you got one that's going to run her mouth and going to come and tell everything on day 1. You got another one that ain't going to say nothing till day 20. Then you got another one that ain't going to say nothing at all. And then the other one will come back on day 28 and say, you know what, this happened. So say, for example, we are on a break. The only person that will probably get that notification right away would be our superintendent. So now the superintendent has got to gather up all this information from find out if the story is, credible, then you got to get all this other stuff. Well, by the time you get witnesses and everything, that video is covered up.
It could be, yes. So one of the things, if there was something that was reported, or there was an incident, whether it was on day 1, day 28, day 29, that information would get pulled off at that point and saved. So it wouldn't have to, if a student came on day 25 and, said, hey, there was an incident here, somebody would go and review that footage and pull that off, pull anything off that was pertinent. And when you say over a break, the video surveillance system doesn't take a break. My team doesn't take a break. I know, the superintendent doesn't take a break. And if something happens over a break, likely it's not happening on school grounds. If it is, if there's vandalism or an incident on a playground or in a parking lot, I can't say for certain. I've found in other districts I've worked with, those things get reported fairly quickly. I can't come up with one instance. I'm trying to think. I can't pull an instance in my head where we've had to go back and find footage that doesn't exist.
So the other question is, this happens on day 29. Well, let's just say day 30. The superintendent gets the information. I'm sorry, I keep adding you into this, but the superintendent gets the information. Not only does he get the information that an incident has happened, but he has had not any time to pull that footage. So once that footage, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt you, that footage is no longer available, what do we do then?
Then it would be other sources that you would have to look for that information. But the one thing I can tell you, it's not my team and it's not the superintendent that's monitoring. All of our administrators are going to have access. They'll have the ability to be able to pull footage off. So if a student comes in and reports to a counselor, a teacher, a trusted adult in the building that something has happened, they can go to that administrator, they can come to our team, they can go to Mr. Shelton, they can go to law enforcement, and they'll be able to pull that footage off. So it's not like myself or Dr. Delgado are the only people that have access to the system.
So you're saying that law enforcement will have it as well?
Yes. That was the goal of this. One of the goals of this project was to ensure that law enforcement had access to
Getting the
systems
surveillance
when they needed it. Yes.
Okay. I still just want 90 days.
Mr. Rich. I'm not sure. Oh, wait, Mr. Rich.
Yeah, so, and then a few things. So say it's reported on day 29, right? And I know you kept saying, well, then it takes days to investigate it further, to find witnesses, all that. Right, but it got pulled on day 29. We now have it permanently. And so however many extra days it takes to find witnesses, to have additional information doing that full investigation, doesn't matter how many more days it takes, we already have that permanently here.
Exactly, but what if it's on day 30?
I mean, as Mr. Prescott said, it's the same as saying, what if someone reported on day 91? It's a continuous.
At some point, there's going to
moving-
be.
Yeah, at some point, there is going to be that time. And, I mean, we don't know, unfortunately, like, what would be reported following 30 days. But a lot of these instances, as has been brought up, is those would be reported within that time. And if not, that's where we have to go into the other investigations as well, and would have to do that anyway.
And I appreciate that due to the fact that I just want to make sure that we have enough footage so when it is pulled, that the superintendent will be able to say he has that information, or Mr. Shelton has that information, or even our law enforcement. I don't want anyone to be in a situation to say they didn't see something happen. And I'm not just talking about vandalism. I'm talking about the safety of a student or something happening on grounds, or a staff member, even after school or whatever. That's my only concern. I just want more days, not because it's standard and it's cheap. Cheaper. That's what I'm saying.
Ms. Heinrich, Ms. Fox, and then Dr. Delgado.
Yeah, I just want clarification right now. This bid is for the camera equipment and the recording software that goes along with it.
Yes.
Two pieces with the software. You said it has law enforcement connectivity.
Yes.
Can you expand on that? And also, there's new technology is always changing and improving. And so is the software is it a system that will be able to be updated as improvements come along?
Yes.
And if new software comes out, would we have to get new cameras to go with the new software? Could we get the new software to go with the existing cameras?
No, so what was your first question again? I'm sorry.
First one was just expand on what is
yes,
this law enforcement
So we have,
connectivity look like?
so it's called a video management system, or a VMS, is your security system. So there's servers that sit in our data center that hold all this footage. There's a client, just like a program, that sits on your computer that you can open, and the cameras that you have permission to view show up on your screen. And it's all permissions based. So, if we giving law enforcement access, we would simply create them a user account. We would give them a VPN, which is a virtual private network, so you can access our resources when you're outside of the district. They would launch that, log into the cameras, and they would be able to view whatever cameras, view anything that we gave them permission to view. So it's a program that sits on their computer. My understanding is the police department uses the same program or the same software that we're installing. So they're familiar with how it works and its functionality. We won't need to train them. From what I understand, they're very comfortable using that already.
So we're not really approving that part of it? That's something that
Yeah,
district will
that's part of
decide
the
on?
that's part of the setup of
Okay.
the software and the functionality of it.
So it's available, but the district hasn't really unlocked that key yet. It's up to the district to decide whether to do that.
Yeah, it's not available. Nothing's been installed. It hasn't been approved yet, so we haven't installed. But
That's one of the reasons
it's
that
one
we're
of the-
going with this particular
So
system.
everything's stored on the cloud?
No, everything is stored in 7 servers in our data center right over there.
Oh, okay, all right, and so they just have capacity, and so once it fits capacity, then it starts
Yes, on our servers, yes.
on our servers.
Yes. And then your second question,
Was the software piece of it?
Yes. So-
As things improve?
Yep.
Is it updatable so that we can?
yeah, so any system that we purchased would be upgradable. One of the reasons that we went with this one, not only is it one of the favorites that we saw, it also comes with free lifetime upgrades. So if a new version of the software comes out and you want those features, you install them. Most vendors, most software or virtual VMS providers, there's a fee to upgrade those. It could be anywhere from $500 a server to $3,000 a server. When you've got 7 servers, a new version comes out every year, that's an extra 10 grand that you're spending a year on that. We're not having to do that in this case.
That's a good point, thank you.
Power outages.
Hang on, Ms. Fox was next, and then.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm just a little bit confused. You know, you say you got 30 days from here, but on the other side, you say, well, I can still get that after the 30 days. I'm not real clear.
No.
What are you saying?
So if an incident happened today and somebody came to me next week and reported it, or said, hey, you know, we need footage from this camera at this day and this time, an incident happened, we can download that essentially onto a flash drive, onto, you know, Mr. Shelton's computer, onto my computer, onto a flash drive, and that's saved then for as long as I need it. It doesn't go away. On the server.
It is available, it's just not going to be available after the 30 days.
Yeah, so after 30 days, if I went back in, so after that period of time, if I went onto the server and I said, okay, you know, I need to go back to 45 days ago and search for something, I'm going to go and look for that, and it's going to say video not found on the server itself. If I've saved that and put it on my computer, or put it on a flash drive, or downloaded it and saved it anywhere, I always have it. I couldn't go back and search it on the server, but I can give it to Dr. Delgado, I can give it to the police department, I can give it to a building administrator, anybody that needs that footage. Obviously, when we're dealing with video footage, there's a chain of custody as well that goes into that. So, you know, you don't want anybody that has access to be able to view the cameras, to be able to pull footage off and share that footage. You want to make sure that you have controls in place as to who can access and who can export and who can view.
Power outages.
Hang on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know somebody else had their hand up.
Okay.
So as I understand it, and I'm just trying to make sure that maybe providing a different example might help. So if I've got a program saved on my TV, and my TV provider will only save it for 30 days. You know, my DVR is going to save for 30 days, and there's only so much space, so they're not going to let you save thousands of videos. There's only so much space. So after 30 days, they're going to purge it. But if I want it for longer, I can put it on a VCR or a DVD or a CD or something like that, and then I have it. So what I think I hear you saying is the likelihood of someone taking more than 30 days to report an event that requires us to look at footage, if there's an emergency situation, the likelihood of it being more than 30 days is remote. If it's a vandalism situation, the likelihood of us not seeing it for more than 30 days is remote. I'm just trying to think of scenarios where we might need to pull some footage. Altercations with students, a robbery, anything like that. The likelihood of it not being reported for more than 30 days is probably remote, and it might not be cost effective to spend more money on storage for an extra 30 or 60 days, given what you know about the standard and maybe what law enforcement knows about how often we need to go back to old videos. Is that right?
I'd say that's a fair statement.
Okay.
Ms. Smith?
There's two things. Number one, power outage. I'm out of power right now at home. So will it be able to?
Yeah, so we have, in the data center, we have battery backups. It's called the UPS, and we have generators. I believe most of our buildings have generators as well.
That's good to know.
That our network equipment is plugged into. So when the power goes out, network stays up, cameras stay up.
And now,
typically.
we're speaking on the behalf of the police department. We have 2 officers in the back. Is it okay if they tell us what the situation is with them, how they would handle it? I mean,
That's not up
if
to
you
me.
want to, I mean, I'm just saying, you want to vote,
Yeah.
you know, and you want a unanimous vote. So I think you should have somebody come tell us from the police department, I think, what we do.
Now, if that's what you would like, if you would like to invite them to the podium.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So is it okay if one of the officers come and tell us?
Pardon me?
That's
Go
not up
ahead.
to me.
No, my only thing was I was going to invite Officer Clark up.
Yes, 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 yes.
We were thinking the same thing, right? Yes, Officer Clark.
Yes, come on up. Thank you.
While they're coming up, if I may, one of the things that I appreciate that I'm excited about is the shift from the Avigilon system to the digital watchdog system. And so when I joined the district with the background of safety that I have in my prior district, I asked Mr. Prescott about that, is do we have a system through Oakland Schools that has the ability to have police connectivity? And the answer was at this point with the Avigilon system, it's not as user-friendly for police connectivity. This digital watchdog, which is a new VMS that we're asking for your approval tonight, does have that. So now we're talking about instantaneous access to cameras from law enforcement, from our high school, middle school, elementary administrators, from me, from Mr. Shelton, from our team. And so collectively, we can all look, see, grab, record, save anything immediately. And we have a whole communication protocol as soon as any incident is reported to us that we all start to review cameras and jump into our respective duties. Theoretically, if a student says, for example, I was bullied, and here's an incident that happened a week ago, but I was also bullied back in November. This is a perpetual thing. No, we couldn't go back to November and look at video surveillance, but we could go back to talk to people who were in proximity back in November, or they were at a sporting event, or they were in the cafeteria. So that's the alternative investigative methods. But no, we wouldn't be able to go back to the camera. So I appreciate what the ask is tonight, and I appreciate the clarification. So turn it over to law enforcement.
Thank you, Detective Kovernick. I want to just kind of go on the 30 days to the 90 days. I was actually very excited to hear you bring that up. Without giving you much detail, because it is an active case currently working on, but just to give you an example, the incident occurred, it was on video. We were able to find the individual, deal with the situation at hand. Well, what came out of that information was that it related to 3 other instances, and they were based around school threats. And so being able to go back and then trace this individual and their movements and things of the like, and finding that everything just keeps relating. Unfortunately, I've lost some of the video because of the time restraints from back in November. So, and I don't know if that was something that changed recently. I sent an email out to say, hey, did we just change this? Because there was a longer time that the current system was able to save. But that would be an example that would relate to having that time. Another example would be, what about over the summer? Do we have things that happen at the schools, at the end of the summer when no one's there, and then we find out about it, well past 30 days later because we're not there to actively see it. So that would be 2 examples that I just wanted to bring up in relation to that. So the longer time we have, absolutely will benefit us all, so.
Thank you.
I have to agree with my colleague, only because we do get, by the time the police get it, there may be instances where something happened 2 weeks prior. There may be instances where stuff has happened 30 days because a child has decided, or they have been hesitant in reporting. We may get things from kids that are in development now, how do you say, emotional support programs like Farmington Youth Assistance, where things have happened a while ago, and then they report to us that this child is saying this was going on more than 30 days or whatever. Can you start to investigate it? We may get something from CPS where something has come out that occurred more than 30 days ago. And this would just be another tool that we could use to either affirm it or deny it. hopefully we can deny some allegations, especially if they're false allegations. There's nothing better than having the video to refute it. However, if we don't have it, we have to go into what you were saying, Dr. Delgado, and that is trying to find people to interview and to support that. All right? But sometimes those people may not necessarily tell the truth. It helps if we have the video in which we can compare what is being said and what we can view. So 30 days, that may be the standard for some. I can't tell you. 90 days would be better. Yes, I'm sure there's a cost. I do appreciate the technology upgrades and the camera upgrades and those type of things. My only concern at this point, after listening, is the time. I'm not sure 30 days is enough. I may get a case and the prosecutor sends it back for further information because they may get information of something that happened more than those 30 days ago. If I can find a video for that, that may help. I hope I'm making myself clear enough.
Mr. Rich, and then Ms. Heinrich.
Thank you. I think many of us have been going off the assumption that this was also the 30 days was the recommendation when speaking with our law enforcement on this as well. With this being said, I mean, I think we need to reconsider on it, and would very much be interested in getting those updated bid numbers, or just trying to figure out what we'd be looking at. But I mean, this was going off the assumption that this is what was presented and was the recommendation from from working with our law enforcement as well.
I don't disagree with that. I assume that
Ms. Heinrich.
Yeah, I was going to move to table the motion until the district can bring us cost comparisons for 30, 60, and 90-day storage models.
Support.
I'd like to hear that as well. I'd also like to understand, I really appreciated hearing from law enforcement. I'd like to understand how that applies to the school environment. How often is there a need to review surveillance in a school environment? All the time, for beyond 90 days? I mean, beyond 30 days? Okay.
Not only that, but if it's just one case.
Yeah, too many.
I apologize. So sorry. If it is one case, then that victim, that child who is the victim, or that staff member who may be the victim, that's important to them. And it should be, in my opinion, it should be important to us. We don't want, of course, we never want anything to happen, but if anything were to happen, we want to, as a district, I would love for us to be the ones that have investigated as thorough as possible and have gone, pulled whatever evidence we could so that the best decision could be made if it goes to the law enforcement level. And I'm sure, you would want to know the very best if it has to go to some type of disciplinary or change in policy coming from the board. You'd like to have as much information as possible. I hope that answers the question. Ms. Wing?
Can we call for the question?
I'm
No.
sorry. Did that answer your question?
Sorry, yes, it did.
Okay.
So, sorry, we're just talking like procedurally. We had a second on the motion.
Okay.
So we can do one of two things. I can rescind the motion, which I'm happy to do, or we can have another motion to table it and get the 30, 60, 90 days. So what I will do is I will rescind the motion.
We made the motion to table.
There was already a motion on the table?
It was already.
There was already my motion on the table.
So as a point of order, there was a motion on the table. It was seconded. But then the motion to table was made and seconded. So we can just vote on that for a majority to table it.
I didn't hear you second it. I didn't hear her acknowledge that motion or second it.
But it wasn't, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
It wasn't acknowledged by,
Right.
so, yeah, you can just go ahead.
So you can just rescind.
So I'm going to rescind the motion. Okay. And what we would like, yep.
Is what Ms. Heinrich,
So I move to table the motion until the district can bring a cost comparison. I'd like to see a cost comparison for 30, 60, and 90 days of storage.
Support.
motion made by Ms. Heinrich to table this motion, supported by Ms. Smith. Okay. I'm glad we're choosing to err on the side of discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion?
And you can do others favor.
I would like to say that I'm glad that we're choosing to err on the side of caution. Thank you, Ms. Smith, for bringing this.
We need to move on the motion.
Pardon me?
We need to, all in favor?
Yes, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. All right, moving on to the consent agenda.
I don't have that.
Okay.
Oh, Mr. Rich.
Oh, Mr. Rich, go ahead.
I move that the Board of Education approve the March 7th, 2023 consent agenda as follows. A, approval of minutes for the February 7th, 2023 regular meeting.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Rich, supported by Ms. Heinrich. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Reports from board representatives this evening. Do we have any reports? Yes, Ms. Heinrich.
Oakland County School Board Association, last month we voted on two motions, new and amended resolutions, and that was approved. And we also voted on proposed amendments to bylaws, and that was approved also. And the report came through the district on how it was voted. Did everybody get that email? All right, so everybody has email. So now the public knows.
Okay.
Ms. Fox.
Yes, the Farmington African American Parent Network is hosting a financial lunch and learn for high school students on March 11th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Farmington High School, where we have our FAMPN meetings.
Oh, so that's this Saturday then, yes?
Yes, it is.
So it's
March the 11th.
So it's right after the tutoring.
Yes.
Tutoring's still 9 to 11. Awesome. Thank you both. Yes, thank you both for those reports.
Student Roundtable met on Tuesday, February 14th. It's always refreshing to see the students. Mr. Smith was there. He had his listening session, and the previous meeting, he only got through 2 of his 3 questions, and so he asked a 3rd question with regards to diversity, equity, and inclusion. What are some things you would like to see more of? They also, the students are going to have a joint meeting with the Student Roundtable and the IDEA student group. And the IDEA student group is the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity Alliance group. And so they're going to have a joint meeting. So that was kind of exciting to see the 2 groups meeting together. And the IDEA conference is May 15th. And the students, their task was to set a date for their career college fair. And so just seeing the report on the CDE and everything that we're doing and all of the opportunities for students for career exploration, it's really exciting that the student leadership group wants to have a career in college fair for the future for the high school students.
And they're organizing it themselves, right?
They are. So it should be interesting to see how it plays out. It's hard for the adults in the room to step back and let the students make the decisions, but really the mom and the teacher and me would probably give them less latitude, but I'm just an observer and a fly on the wall, and I have a lot of respect for our district leaders to really lift up the leadership of these students. And, you know, it's such a wonderful learning experience when they actually do something and they actually figure things out and learn from their experience, because it would be a lot easier and much smoother if the adults organized it. I shouldn't say that.
It's true.
But it is true. Yeah, I just remember from my teaching.
It depends on the kid, though. Some of these
Yeah.
kids are.
When I had my stats students do a survey and then I based the exam on it, and I was like, well, you guys did the survey. This is the real data. So, I mean, it was a good learning experience, but it's really hard to do that. So I really lift up the leadership in our district. And the principals are there, as well as Dr. Delgado and Mr. Smith. And so, you know, they really have the support of the administration. And I was just impressed with the way things are going.
There's so much rich learning there.
Yeah, there really is.
Thank you. Any other reports? Thank you so much. Recommendations for future agenda items. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Good and welfare. Yes, Ms. Weems.
I have a lot. I'm going to try to go fast.
Okay.
So first, I want to congratulate the North Farmington girls basketball team. They won all of their games, all 22 of their games. Unfortunately, they were they had a hard game at the district level and were not successful, but pretty proud of that girls basketball game, and also pretty proud of the fact that the students were really rallying around them. Often when I go to a girls basketball game, there aren't a lot in attendance, but they were really, really rooting for this team, so I felt really good about that. I also want to acknowledge the horrible events that took place at MSU and offer condolences to those who were directly or indirectly impacted. I think every one of us knows someone who either attended MSU or has a current student there, and so that was really, really scary. Yeah, so my condolences to those impacted. Was very happy to see a lot of Black History events taking place over the past month across all of our schools. Was able to participate in an activity at Longacre, reading to some kindergarten students. It was really, really fun. I appreciate doing that. I'm looking forward to more of that during March's Reading Month. That is always a really special time for me. I attended the strategic planning session last week on Tuesday around student voice, and I was very, very pleased. I can't find a better word to describe the feeling I left from there. I was just so overwhelmingly impressed by the group that was there, teachers, administrators, who were really, like, with real fidelity looking to understand how we can incorporate student voice more, like really thinking through how do students want to be heard, what types of environments do they want to be heard in? How do they want to get feedback back to them after they've been heard? How do they know they've been listened to? It was just really, really helpful to understand, and Dr. Coffin was in that session as well, and so I just wanted to give kudos to that group for their work and in developing survey questions and really seeking to understand from a student's perspective how we can understand, listen from them, and incorporate that feedback continuously. So that was really good. On another relatively very sad note, I wanted to acknowledge a person who does a whole lot for this district, Beth Hewlett, who is a 15-year PTA mom, a very, very active mother, advocate for children all across the board. She lost her son who attended Farmington Public Schools. He was 18. And it was a tragic accident, really. And I just want to offer my condolences to her family. I know she's comforted by the amount of love that she's receiving from a lot of people in the community, including across the district. And so continue to keep her and her family in your prayers. The PTA Council Awards were this past Monday, and Beth was recognized. You know, even before this tragedy happened with her son, she was already scheduled to be recognized for her efforts across the district for several years. She doesn't even have kids in the district anymore, but she's still, you know, doing all that she can. So I was happy to see her recognized, and there were lots of great people recognized. This is an annual event where lots of the volunteers who do a lot of what we do for, you know, no pay, get to be recognized and celebrated for their efforts. And so I was really happy to see two of our secretaries at some of our schools who are retiring get recognized. Jackie Sherbrooke, who is at Warner, and Bernie Gillis, who is at Wood Creek, are personal favorites of mine. I was really happy to see them get recognized. So that was good. Also wanted to lift up two Raiders at North, Sydney and Callie, who are part of the Detroit Youth Choir. They made it to the finals of America's Got Talent. A few weeks ago, they got the Golden Buzzer, which is rare, which was really great. We're very proud of the fact that they got through so many rounds and were one of the last 11 in that competition, so congratulations to them. The Farmington Hills Education Foundation announced their 2023 Innovation Grant recipients. I won't steal their thunder, but I do want to say that, you know, they do a lot for our community, and I know that there's a Give Day coming up. If that's something you participate in, please consider the Farmington Hills Education Foundation. Another thing that's coming up is scholarships. They facilitate scholarships across the district. The deadline for those scholarships for you folks with seniors is April 14th. Please go to the district website and apply. It's so easy, so streamlined. You can apply one time for multiple scholarships. My scholarship is one of them. We've been annually giving out a scholarship to Farmington Hills students every year, and so applications are open, I believe, sometime this week, and will be open or closed April 14th. And then finally, or two things, wanted to give a rah-rah to the Teachers of the Year who were announced this past year. We'll probably see them soon, so I won't announce their names, but I'm really glad to hear that a teacher from East, Lanigan, and North were awarded, including one special teacher who got a 2-year car, a lease from our partners at Suburban. That is just a wonderful thing that they do every year. I'm really, really impressed by that and very grateful that they recognize our teachers in that way. And then I have a plea. Please consider donating your cans and bottles to the North Farmington Music Boosters can and bottle drive this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. If you live in a community that has a lawn sign at the front of your community, we will be walking around in the cold, so please leave your cans and bottles outside for us. Or better yet, drive them to North Farmington on Saturday or Sunday between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. Again, cans and bottles for a fundraiser for the music boosters so that our choir, our bands, all of our music folks can go on field trips. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Weems. Yes, Ms. Miller.
We had a Black History guest speaker over at Hillside, so, not Hillside, Sting. So members of the community, board members, administration were asked to come in and read. I had the opportunity to read to several students, but I read to Miss Ollie's class, who gave me a beautiful picture to go on my refrigerator. That first grade class was awesome. Also, this past week, I was over at STEAM for their first annual Black History Museum. And they had their 8th graders take you on tours, and it was hands-on, and they had people that you may not have known that were like astronauts, Arthur Ashe and some other people. This month is Reading Month, as Dr. Delgado stated. This is the time that I enjoy most of being on the board, so I have already started with that. I see Dr. Coffin in the audience smiling. Costumes are out and ready. I've read at Lanigan already. I was one of the Incredibles last week. And then this week, Friday, I will be at Gil, dressed as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. And then I will be at Hillside probably as Thing 1 or the Tin Man. Not sure yet. So all of the principals have reached out and said they are excited, looking forward to me coming in reading. And I think the teachers and the principals are more excited than the kids to see the costumes. So that is pretty much it. Everything else, I guess, has been covered. So thank you.
Ms. Smith, do you have a favorite costume that you like?
The one that I get pulled over the most for is the Tin Man and the Nun. So those are the two right now.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Heinrich?
Yeah, I attended February 24th. It was a Friday night, but anyways, an afternoon, a MASB winter workshop. Yes, Winter Institute. But I went to a workshop on the spectrum of school security, which was very good. Jason Russell, Secure Education Consultants. There were 2 people from SETSEG there that were the presenters. But Secure Education Consultants, we have a grant that we've applied, and they're supposed to come and do an assessment of our district. It's one of the things that they recommended. But one of the things that, where was my note? The best prevention is really identifying the behaviors and identifying the warning signs. You know, that was the biggest thing. And just the importance of a school district having a good emergency plan, having good training in place, and not just training for a single incident, but just overall training. And so we're actively engaged as a district in doing things, but it's not a one and done, and it's never enough. But, you know, I'm pleased that our district has many things in place, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. You know, so, and the other class I was on Advanced Community Relations, and I was excited to take that class also because we have our community engagement committee, and we're moving and making great strides in this area also. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and just like to reiterate the PTA Founders Dinner, it was just so refreshing to see so many leaders. I mean, every school is represented by their PTA president and recognized and giving awards for people for their leadership and their service to our community. It's a great community. So that was great to see.
I was at the Hackbots tournament. Now that FAP and tutoring has been at Farmington High School, the Hackbots have their, I don't even know what they call it, their laboratory, their workshop. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's not just a workshop, it's multiple rooms, and there's one room that's just all graphics and design, and another that's CAD/CAM, and another that's coding, and then another room that's building the robot with all the different kinds of equipment for metalwork and woodwork, because they have to build mock-ups of the tasks that they're going to have to solve at the competitions. And so I've been going each week after FAP and tutoring to see their progress and how what their problem-solving process is for how they're going to design the robot to complete these tasks. And then I planned on going to Milford High School. Despite the snow, I planned on going and staying for 2-3 hours. I stayed the whole day. It was just so fascinating and exciting. And our team, you don't compete by yourself. You are randomly assigned to an alliance, either the Red Alliance or the Blue Alliance. So there are 4 different robotics teams against 4 other different, robotics teams, and they have to compete together, and the scores are combined, and it's really, really amazing. So there's both competition and collaboration. If I were hiring people to be in the field of technology and graphic design and those skill areas, that's where I'd shop for my future employees, because they are so dedicated and so good at articulating what they're doing as well as collaborating together. It was really a beautiful thing to see. So, so congratulations to the Hackbots, and thank you for letting me tag along. Is there any other good and welfare? All right, seeing none, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.